Hey everyone, guess what? We do not have ugly swag. We have spaced out radio gear that you're going to want to wear. Why? Because no one wants to wear ugly clothing. So head on over to spacedoutradio.com and go shopping today. You'll be glad you did. And it's a great way to support our show. Once you get your gear, send us a picture of you rocking out in your SOR swag. spacedoutradio.com, shop there today, and make yourself look good. Welcome to Spaced Out Radio, the After Hours radio show with me, your host, Mr. Rob G. Guess what? It's going to be a fantastic show tonight. We have with us ufologist, researcher, the Reverend Michael J. Carter in the building. We're going to be talking UFOs, a religion, the conversation before disclosure, because I think it's an important one to have. Guess what? We're going to be getting into that and a lot more. Let me see who's come in and got the gold positions. We got Race Fan with the gold. We have Kitty Catty Whack with the silver. We have Tamoth Man with the bronze. Appreciate you guys for coming on in. We got UFO Tim James out there in the building as well. We got Male WD-40 getting us lubed up and ready for the show as if he didn't have anything else to do. Appreciate you coming on in. We got SOR in the building. We got Kitty Catty Whack. As I said earlier, we also have Night Drive. I watch Baywatch. Appreciate you coming on in. We have Roger Murray in the building. Hey, Roger Murray, thanks for coming on in. We got T-Bone. We have Undead Jed. We have Pat Fisher. We have Flubber Lane. Thanks for coming in. We have Matt Goodcut. Thanks for showing up here tonight. We keep going down the list. We have Kurt M. Hey, Kurt M. Thank you for coming on in. We started a little bit late, so we're about to start the podcast side of this. I swear, I promise I will get to everybody on the next break here. Let's start the podcast side of this. Welcome to Spaced Out Radio, the After Hours radio show with me, your host, Mr. Rob G. It's going to be a fantastic show tonight. We have ufologist, researcher, Reverend Michael J. Carter in the building talking UFOs and religion. The conversation before disclosure, very important one to have, guys. I'm telling you, we're almost there. So we're getting ready to jump into this for hours 1 and 2. We got hour 3. Steve Stockton tells and told Miss Person Mysteries, and then Josh Rutledge coming in. Let's go. Greetings, space travelers. Welcome home. You've just tuned your dial to Spaced Out Radio, the only place where you can own the night. I'm your host, Mr. Rob G. And tonight, we're broadcasting to you on our terrestrial affiliates across North America, plus digitally on digital platforms all around the world. Don't forget, you can access all of our archives absolutely free, youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. And while you're there, please consider hitting that subscribe button. Also, don't forget to follow us on X and Instagram at Spaced Out Radio and at Spaced Out Radio Show. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where the options are endless. You can stay up to date with SOR Newswire. You can get yourself some official Spaced Out swag. Plus, rock out to the man you hear right there, Mr. Ron Bumblefoot, and so much more. We're going to have a fantastic show here tonight. As I said, once again, we'll have ufologist, researcher, the man that you see all over TV, the Reverend Michael J. Carter, stepping in, talking UFOs and religion. Very important conversation to have before disclosure, and I think we're almost there. So let's prepare ourselves for this part of the conversation. We're not going to go and delay anything at all. We're going to go ahead and get the Reverend right up here on the stage, and he's back here. I swear he is. He's actually right here. Mr. Reverend Michael J. Carter, how you doing, sir?
Hey, brother. Thanks for having me on. I always enjoy it, and here we are. You know, I'm an old man now. I have to take a nap before I come on. I'm on the East Coast. You know what I mean?
You know, and I'm going to adjust that a little bit. I'm thinking about taking this show 1 hour earlier for my East Coast people, so look forward to that.
Okay. Now, I don't mind, brother. I don't want you to take that the wrong way. I just noticed, I said, boy, I better go to, because I had service today. And I said, okay, tonight I got to do blah, 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 blah. I want to be on Rob's show. So I better at least take an hour nap. So I'm feeling good. I'm ready to rock and roll. So, but yeah, if you change the time, I ain't mad with you. But if you don't, I'll still be here. You call, I answer.
No, and I really appreciate that, because
I love it.
That is very, very true. You definitely drop what
I'm
you
here.
do.
I'm here, brother. You call.
I value that so much. I just want to let you know. And because of that, let me go ahead and sit back and give you your accolades. This is the Reverend's bio, guys. He's an ordained interfaith minister, received the BA degree in letters from the College of New Rochelle, where he graduated cum laude.
Yeah, cum laude. With honors.
He received a master's in divinity degree from Union Theological Seminary in New York City, class of 2000. He served as staff chaplain, board certified at various hospitals in New York and North Carolina. While serving the Unitarian Universalist congregations in New York, Michael was trained as anti-racism trainer and has been recognized by President Clinton for his efforts. Longtime UFO contactee. And book Alien Scriptures, Extraterrestrials in the Holy Bible was March 2014 #1 on Amazon list of UFO related books. He's also appeared on George Norrie's Coast to Coast radio show, George Norrie's TV show Beyond Belief, and on Gaia Television. Other TV appearances, being a regular on the History Channel Ancient Alien series, which I probably could go find you there right now. Also appeared on America's Greatest Mysteries, hosted by Lawrence Fishburne, as well as being featured on UFO TV documentary, The Real 4400, UFOs of Hidden Evidence on the Travel Channel. Just a long list of things, and it's crazy.
Yeah, that's
turn around without seeing you, and it means you're an important part of the conversation. And that's what people fail to realize. I mean, they see you on this show, they don't realize how long you've been doing this, how deep you're into the subject. And you always have this intelligent perspective, which is why I love seeing you doing it, and then being able to have you on the show talking to you. It's always awesome for me. So I had to lay out that red carpet for you, because I think you deserve that.
Appreciate it, brother. I appreciate it.
Getting into the conversation, because there was I'm sitting around thinking, and when I'm selecting guests for the next shows, I'm like, man, where are we at in the conversation? Where are we at in disclosure? And I'm looking around and I'm like, okay, I've always said, it seems like with all the whistleblowers and the momentum that we've had leading towards disclosure, there isn't anything else left but maybe a whistleblower that comes out that's directly involved with the receiving of these crash retrievals. And if that's the case, that means we are probably that close to disclosure. So then where does religion come in? It's always been part of the subject. We've talked about it, how important it is historically, but I think we also probably are going to have the conversation, prior to disclosure. So that's why I wanted to bring you on. I don't know what you think about that, but let's start there.
Well, I was thinking about this today, and I think about it a lot. Religion is the missing piece. I want to be clear. We need greater minds than I coming on talking about, the aspect, talking about the national security, greater minds than I, and those are important topics. But we need to really talk about the religious aspect, because when this comes out, I mean, when it's full blown, people are going to be seeking help. And when they find out that, according to some of these ancient texts, that these beings had a hand in creating us, yes, there's a God, if you believe in that. I happen to believe in something greater than myself, but we were raised with God created human beings. And when we look at Mesopotamian texts, Enuma Elish, when we look at Genesis, we're being told that these beings have had a hand in upgrading us, in creating us. There's going to be an ontological shock like you will not believe. And with all the hearings, with all the whistleblowers, there's, outside of the Vatican, on occasion, there's no noise from religion at all. And you would think that this is what we're going to be talking about. Well, how does this affect people's religious beliefs, their spiritual beliefs? And, ne'er a dog barked, as they say. And I think that needs to change, because I think that this is more than about tech. It's about tech and national security. It's about that, but it's about the change in consciousness that we need if we're going to grow up and become a part of the Galactic Federation, or even without that, if we want to save this planet, because we're this far from destroying it. So it's a conversation that needs to be had. I'm having it with other ministers, but I've had ministers tell me, Rob, that, Michael, if what you're saying is true, I can't be a believer anymore. And I'm like, why? You don't have to do that. But I cannot wrap my mind around this. If you're telling me that extraterrestrials exist and they had influences on our religion, I can't do this anymore. I think that's extreme. I respect it. But I think that's what the Bible is about, telling us about what it was like to share the planet with these beings. So it's right there. The Aboriginal stories, the Palladians, the Cherokee, the Hopi, they're telling you, deeply spiritual cultures, that we can coexist, that we have coexisted, and there's no need to give up. But there are people who are going to have a rough time with this knowledge.
And you actually touched on something that I definitely still want to get to a little bit later, the sitting down with religious leaders and other theologians and that whole behind the scenes conversation. But starting at, okay, we have these secret keepers out there, and it has been rumored that with some of the reasons that they don't want this to come out is because they also hold some sort of religious belief, and they have a different perspective on what this means. Are you able to to that? Like, what are they thinking? Like, what is the thought process with them? And if we're talking about religion, what would be the reason that they feel like they don't want the secret to come out?
Well, outside of the reasons, the financial reasons, that kind of thing, there are many people in our government who hold very orthodox religious views, specifically around Christianity. And a lot of these beings, according to their theology, the way they interpret it is that they're demonic. And we don't need to be meddling in that. That these beings are, which has come a long way. When I first started talking about this 25, 30 years ago, time flies. There, many evangelical brothers and sisters or more conservative brothers here in America were saying, Michael, what are you, stand down. What are you, crazy? Now they will admit, these brothers and sisters will admit, yes, we're not alone. And they're demonic. So we have made progress in a way from they don't exist to they do exist, but they've all been painted with this brush that they are demonic. And so what you have is a lot of people in Congress, at the Pentagon, who are very conservative brothers and sisters theologically and Christian, and we cannot have this conversation that these beings are here to help us. And I believe some are, not all, but I believe some are. But they've just said, no, we're not going to have that conversation. These beings are demonic, and we need to stop meddling with it. And if you're going to keep meddling with it, then we need to think about how we're going to deal with this threat.
So let me ask you this. I mean, everyone should be allowed to have a religious perspective and allowed to delve into any religion they would like to or not. But when it comes to the government, right, and the authority that they have, do you think that religion should be allowed to play into the decision making that they have there? So if they're saying we're not going to release secrets and it's because of my personal religious view, do you think that that's okay?
I don't think that's okay, because then it goes, where does it stop? I do believe that I know for a fact that these conversations are being had with higher religious officials than me. I mean, I have my church, and I'm doing my thing. I'm a member of the professional clergy. I'm an experiencer. I'm sure there are bishops and other high-ranking people in the religious world having these conversations behind closed doors. I'm sure of that, but I don't know if they're going to come forward, because how do you tell people, Rob, this? Guess what, gang? We made a treaty with some beings about 80 years ago. Yes, we broke the Constitution. Some of these beings lied, and so we allowed certain things to happen. Some people lost their lives. We've been lying to you for about 80 years. That's not going to fly, but that's really the conversation that would have to be had. And that's a political conversation, but this whole thing is political. And I'm not talking about who you vote for on blue or red. I'm not talking about that. But when you go back and look at the stories in the Bible, when you go back and look at what's going on today, when you go back and look at Exodus with Yahweh dealing with the Israelites, Yahweh was a king. He was a pharaoh. He was dealing with the Egyptians. That's politics. When you have David and King Solomon, and they're worshiping the Elohim or different Elohim, that's political. It always has been. And so on a deeper level than, okay, you're conservative, I'm not, you're red state, blue state. I'm not talking about that, even though that factors in. But we have to start having these conversations about how this is affecting us. Do we have a need to know? I think the American people do. I think the world does. So again, circling back to what you asked, that's a long answer, but who gets to decide what you and I and the listeners and the people of this great nation and this great planet, who gets to decide you're not ready to hear that? You are ready to hear you, because the more you lie, the more you have to keep lying. Where does it end? But that's the conversation, that we may have been created by these beings. So now you got people going, what? What about God? What you got that conversation, and then you have the conversation of, if that we've known about this all this time, that a lot of the tech that we have is part of an exchange program. Now the cat's out of the bag. And I don't envy the person who would have to do it, or persons, but I do know that the conversation must be had. You can't have disclosure without having the religious aspects of it talked about. That's not disclosure. It's not disclosure. The religious aspect of this, and I'm using religious and spiritual, sometimes they're two different things, but it has to be addressed. And so far, the only people who have talked about this have been from the Vatican. You don't hear any Protestant people talking, leaders talking about this. And you know, the people who talk about it at the Vatican, if they come out and talk about this, they have to have had permission from the Pope. Now, Francis, and then, you know, what was it? Benedict the 16th, very conservative Pope. In 2009, he came, and I'm not Catholic, okay? But in 2009, he came out and said that Yahweh is not the name of God. Don't use that name. And that you shouldn't be surprised that there may be extraterrestrials in the Bible. Francis comes along and says he would baptize an extraterrestrial if they asked. I mean, so they're putting that out there. Monsignor Balladucci, the Vatican exorcist. I forget the long title. I'm putting it crudely, but he came out and said that when people come and tell you about these beings with extraterrestrials, they're not having mental breakdowns. These people are not suffering from neuroses. They're telling you that they've had contact with a different type of being. So when people like that talk like that, they can't utter that unless they get permission. Tim Burkett, from the great state of Tennessee, right? Remember, he came out a few months back saying that he believed that Ezekiel's wheel was a UFO. He came out and said that. This guy's from the conservative state of Tennessee. But if he said that, and he did say it, he had to have permission to say that. You just can't get out there and just give people your opinions like that. So here we are. But it only goes that far. Nobody else.
You touched on the Catholics as being ones that are that have come out and talked about this. And I did have a quote here. It looks like from a Catholic priest and the director of the Vatican Observatory.
Yeah. He's a Jesuit too.
Jose Gabriel Fuentes states,
yes.
Just as there exists a multiplicity of creatures on earth, there can be other intelligent beings created by God. This does not contradict our faith because we cannot put limits on the creative freedom of God. And this was a statement from the Catholic Church. Now, with that being said, we know that it was rumored or likely did happen that back in 2014, NASA gathered a group of theologians in order to kind of consult them, engage what would be the impact or what impact disclosure would have. And so that we know that conversation had been had behind the scenes and kind of looking into how that would affect humanity. But I'm thinking that conversation should also be happening on the public stage. What does that conversation look like if we're able to get all these different faiths and religions together, along with non-religious individuals, and just sit down and talk about what this means, you know, to the moment of contact that I feel like is coming up pretty soon?
Yeah, I think what the conversation looks like is that we have these religious leaders from across the various religions on planet Earth and secular leaders as well. You have to have that. And we see how religion and science can stop being played off each other. You know, a lot of times people, you know, because science can be a religion too. People can be dogmatic in their scientific beliefs as well. But somehow some of these beings, not all, have managed to have a high level of spirituality and at the same time have a highly technological civilization. They're not opposed to one another. I think that's one thing we could learn. The other thing is that if we look at those biblical stories, and I think this is crucial, and we have to start getting it, that those stories are not about God, especially in the Old Testament. We can debate the New Testament. Those stories are not about God. Those stories are about the Elohim. Mm-hmm. Those stories are about the tribe of Jacob. Not all of Judaism, because you had the Moabites and the Hittites and all, but it was specifically the tribe of Jacob and his descendants and how those folks shared the planet with the Elohim, with the Nephilim, with the Anunnaki, with the Watchers. So, and why is that crucial? Because if you believe in a God who says, I can go, you go into this land of Canaan where other people are, and you take that land, and you can rape and butcher and kill. If that's the God you worship, then you can do that all in the name of religion. Because all of these wars that we're seeing, that's religion. Yes, there's oil, no question. Yes, there's resources, but these are religious wars. And so if you mistake those beings as God, which they were not, then you got a problem. And so by looking at those stories in a different way, maybe we can change the way we look at each other and find out where we came from, why we're here, and how we can keep on being stewards of planet Earth. That's why I think it's really important that we get it, that those are not God's stories. You can't, that's why people leave religion. I know people, when I meet atheists, and I have friends who are atheists, and they would say, Michael, I can't believe in the kind of God that most people believe in, the God of that Bible. And I say, I don't believe in a God like that either. I get it, and that's why people are leaving religion in droves. And so unless religion, and I'm speaking specifically Christianity because that's the dominant religion here, until we find a new way of making those stories real, of looking at those stories, and of course practicing what we say we believe, churches will be shutting down from now until and now you got the ET layer on top of it. So we've got to grow a pair and come out and talk to brothers and sisters that, hey, let's look at these stories and let's reinterpret them, and then find out who we are, where we come from.
And we're actually going to be going deeper. We're going deeper, guys. So you got to make sure that you don't go anywhere. This is going to be an awesome jam-packed show with the Reverend Michael J. Carter right here on Spaced Out Radio, the After Hours Radio Show. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back right after this break. All right, we are clear, and we're going to welcome some people in. Paramarv is awesome, always putting up the pertinent information. Is where you can find the Reverend's books here on Amazon. Link is right here on the screen. Also, I want to say hey to Miss Catherine Jones out there. Hey, Miss Catherine, thanks for joining us here.
Hey, Miss Catherine.
Yeah, she is here for sure. We have Jules as well in the building. Appreciate you coming on in, Jules. And I'll tag this so we can read this a little bit later, Jules, as well. Susan Alloway, I see you out there. Thanks for coming on in. We have Kim Jellin. Hey, Kim Jellin, thanks for showing up here tonight. Super crazy movie gig. I got the question. I'll hide it real quick. Let me thank you for coming in, though. Appreciate you showing up. Kevin Kennedy, TMI. Appreciate you for coming on in. We also have, let's see, Paul Damon. Appreciate you coming on in. We have Channel Warhorse. Hey, Channel Warhorse. Thanks for showing up tonight. Philip Blair. See you out there. Thanks for showing up. The Jaquetta. I think I said hey, but I'm going to say hey again. Thanks for coming on in. And Griff, new name. Appreciate you coming on in to the show tonight. Let's see. Who else do we have? We have Caged on the Inside. Wow, that says a lot. Appreciate you coming on in as well. Thanks for showing up. Mark Eddy, I see you out there. Thanks for coming on in. Delilah, the Vatican knows more than we do. I would assume so.
There it is.
They have it all locked up. That's for sure. And Joanne, I appreciate you coming on in. We have Fast Timmy also out there. Who else did I miss earlier? T-Bone. Hey, T-Bone, thanks for coming in. Hillbilly Herb, I see you as well. Let's see. Who else? I think that might be close to everybody. Let me see. Matt, I said Matt Goodka for sure. If not, hey, Matt Goodka. Let's see. We have... go back here. Back. President Zaddy, see you out there. Appreciate you coming on in. Flubber Lane, hello. And I think we are current. Yeah. So once again, Reverend, just so glad to have you here. I'm just,
Thanks, brother.
These shows for me, when I do these shows, I want to do a show that's so important to the conversation. Every time you come on, you have something to add, and I think it's just key, especially in the time that we're in right now. It's just like it's so important to at least prepare people's minds for where we're about to be.
Because we're getting ready to go places. I mean, you're looking at this whole thing with AI. Are we? And I don't see anything wrong with these things. But can we handle them spiritually? You know what I mean? You got to have a maturity, because it's like giving a child a weapon, and you can wind up hurting ourselves. I feel that religion is the piece of the puzzle, because whether we believe it or not, most people on the planet believe in something. And we can narrow it down to North America. It is a nation of believers. Now, you can say, well, y'all don't act like you believe in anything. Okay, yeah, we'll talk about it. But since we do, people say they believe in God. Now we have to say, okay, what kind of God are you believing in? Because you can't have a false premise and have a positive ending. You can't. You just can't. So if your argument's based on a lie or an untruth, let's say it that way, then your premise, so we got to go back and look at stuff. And my mind is blown, and I go deeper and deeper into this. But religion is the key. Religion is the key to unlocking the conversation about disclosure. And until we go back and look at our books, look at the stories that we're being told, because it's right there. It's hidden in plain sight. It's right there. I mean, people say, oh, Michael, you say the extraterrestrials in the Bible. Well, I don't say it. The Bible says it. I jokingly say there are no UFOs in the Bible. There are no UAPs in the Bible. They're not unidentified. They're identified. The people of Israel knew what they were seeing when they saw these flying chariots. Josephus knew when he talks about the Battle of Jerusalem in 70 CE, when he says they're flying shields flying over Jerusalem. They're just using the nomenclature, the vocabulary of their time, trying to say, oh my God. But they knew. When people talk about the gods, talk about the gods. Plato believed in the gods, and he also believed in God. Marcus Aurelius talks about the gods, and he talks about the logos, which is his idea of God. John talks about the logos at the beginning of the book of John. So it's right there.
We're coming back right now. All right, everybody, welcome back. Spaced Out Radio, the After Hours radio show with me, your host, Mr. Rob G. We are joined back right here with the always awesome Reverend Michael J. Carter, getting into UFO and religions, the conversation before disclosure, because it's a very important one. And make sure that you tell everyone out there, if they miss any part of this conversation, they can just hop in our archives, because they're absolutely free at youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio, as we jump back into the conversation here. And one thing that I want to start off with is obviously religion. I feel like the same way that I feel like, hey, we should lean on the indigenous and the stories that they've told over the years. I feel like religion is hand in hand with that. It's essentially a group of stories that you can lean into and gain something from. With that being said, this is kind of one of the things that I think one of the reasons we should have the conversation now prior to disclosure is that to give you an example, like Christopher Columbus and they brought the Christian thought process, the religion from their world into North America, and then the Native Americans, the indigenous people here, kind of were forced at some point to adopt this new religion and these new ideas. And the reason why I bring that up is because in a situation where we have our first contact event, people say that there are these Palladians out there are these Nordics that are very human-like. So you have to wonder if they are part of us, just starting there. And then if they are they bringing themselves some sort of layer of religion that they may introduce here to humanity? And the reason why I asked that or even concerned about that is
Great
because
question.
you have a group of people who may immediately subscribe to that. And is that a danger? Is there a danger in that sort of thought process, seeing how it went for the indigenous peoples?
Yeah, well, when you look at Canal Reeves' remake of The Day the Earth Stood Still, and Kathy Bates is representing the president, if you remember, she says about first contact, she said, well, you saw what happened when Europeans met Native Americans, right? And so she's saying that could have a more advanced civilization just swallowed up a less advanced civilization. And so there are some proponents of that theory that these beings are, they could just take advantage of us because of their technology. And yes, they could. But I also think that sometimes people think, well, they're going to do to us what we did to other people. You know what I mean? So that's number one. If you read some of the literature, if you go back and look at Billy Myers, controversial though he is, and he's talking to some Jays and the Palladians, they have a deep spirituality. They happen to think that our religions are very primitive, probably because of the way we treat each other in the name of our religions. But if you go back and look at the earlier contactees, George Adamski, folk like that, now, I don't know if these beings were just meeting them at their map of the world, but it was more of a Christian worldview in the sense that they acknowledged that Jesus was here and that he was a way shower, that kind of thing. There's some Palladians, and because you brought them up, if you read the Billy Myers stories, they call what we would call God, they call it creation. And it is not an anthropomorphic being. It is an energy. Okay, they do acknowledge prophets, but they do acknowledge Jesus. I think that we've interwoven that story. We've replaced God with extraterrestrials. A while ago, someone had called me after Helene, because we got hit pretty hard here. And they said to me, you okay down there? I said, yeah, brother, thanks for calling. But he said, I can't wait for the ETs come and clean all this stuff up. And so I think the danger there is that we just replace God with these folk, which is what our ancestors did. And so now they're the gods. See, we won't take responsibility. It's always going to come save us. We need a savior. We need somebody to clean up the mess. Well, a more mature spirituality says you made the mess. You also have the ability to clean it up. So you will find in contactee stories that Christian kind of through line through it. And then you'll have other who are more like a Native American spirituality, African spiritualities, where we realize we're part of something greater. No, we don't need a savior. We don't need, and then I want to be clear, some people need a savior. I'm not saying you shouldn't. We're talking about the worldview that we get from cultures that we enact with these beings. There's some cultures, like some of the Viking culture, they didn't worship these beings. They knew they were advanced, but they didn't worship him.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? And so, and that's where I hope we could get to after disclosure. You don't have to give up Jesus or Buddha or Lao Tzu or Confucius or, well, I shouldn't say, because Buddhism is a philosophy, as is Taoism. But, and those are the philosophies that will survive. Christianity is going to have a problem. Why? I'm glad you asked. Now, and I think Catholics are Christians too, my personal opinion, but they make room. Some Christians don't. They go, I'm Christian and I'm Catholic, or Christian versus Catholic. But they allow for other deities. They have saints. I can't pray right to Jesus, so I'll go over here to Mary. I'll go to Joseph. I'll go to Saint Bernard. But they have other people in a hierarchy in that pyramid. See, Christianity doesn't. It's based on if Jesus comes down, he's a God man God, or he is God, and he saves us by crucifixion and resurrection. So let's say, do the people on Mars need a savior? Does Jesus have to go there and get beat up and die again and raise again? Does he have to go to Venus to do that? Does he have to go? See, that's a problem. Yeah, that's a theological problem because there's only one. Yeah, and so and that's what Christianity hinges on: the Trinity. God comes down in the form of Jesus, and he saves. You may have some plans to say we don't need to be saved. Saved from what? What are you talking about? And so if you're a Christian, is God really going to have his son get beat up and spit on all these planets and get crucified and raised again? Now, some people may say, well, Michael, no, he only did it that one time for everybody. Well, how do you know that? Yeah. How do you know that?
And that whole idea right there is one of the things that I'm concerned of, and that's why I'm like, okay, so when we sit down and we confront religion, or we sit down and have this talk right before disclosure, because we know there's going to be a group of human beings that look at these things as deities, and if we don't sit down and have the conversation first, then all of a sudden this new cult has popped up, this new alien cult. And we have a chance right now to make sure that we can not allow that to kind of blossom, or at least have people understand that, hey, this is the way we should all be coming into this. And I think that's what we need to do. So exactly what you said, we're sitting down in a room, religious, non-religious, and we're talking about what could be the complications that we face once we embrace these extraterrestrials, and then just taking the idea of them being anything higher than we are, as far as making them deities, I think is something we need to do, something that's very important in this conversation. So it's dangerous thinking, and I think it's detrimental and would have a negative impact on how we go forward. So I
think that if we go through those stories, we talk about, let's look at angels. Angels are in the Bible. Nowhere does it say they have wings. I'm just saying. I don't want people to get mad. People say, an angel visited me. I'm not saying they did. They don't. I'm just saying that nowhere in the Bible does it say they have wings. I believe our ancestors put wings on them and say these brothers and sisters could fly. Okay. But angel doesn't tell you anything about them. It just tells you the function. Angel is, angelos in Greek, malachim in Hebrew. It just tells you what they do. Envoys, judges, diplomats, messengers. Okay? If you look at the biblical stories, if you look at Genesis, they sit down and eat. They sit down and eat. They get tired. Okay? If you look at the Greek stories, they make love. They get drunk. They fight among themselves. Okay, these are not some ephemeral kind of these little spiritual wispy. These are flesh and blood people. Gabriel is in the Quran. He's in the Bible. Everywhere he goes, people are getting pregnant. What is that? I'm not trying to be flippant. I'm just saying, what is that? These beings could mate with earth women. Okay, that means they made love, they had sex. So we need to be taking a look at that, and not just that, but getting away. We have to grow up, and that, wait a minute, you know, Jacob is wrestling with an angel, right? How do you wrestle with an angel? That's a flesh and, okay, so the angel's a flesh and blood person. You know, Jacob in the story says, you know, I'm not going to let you go till you bless me. And so he blesses him, okay? He gives him a limp. That, you know what I'm saying? So we look at angels as these kind of cherubs, and they got the rosy cheeks, and the dominant culture paints them a certain way and whatever. But these are not these wispy spiritual beings. The angels that come to Sodom and Gomorrah and they destroy it. Boy, you got to have a weapon to destroy a whole city like that. You see what I'm saying? And so we got to go back and read and look at those stories and say, what are the writers trying to tell us? If you go back to Samuel and they fire Yahweh. Now, if he's God, why would you have to fire him? They say, we don't want him anymore. We want a human king. We want Saul. Now, later they got David because Saul had issues and Saul didn't do what Yahweh said. Yahweh wanted to scorch earth some people. Saul didn't do it. But I'm saying, does this sound like godlike behavior?
Right.
And so, but we've been taught that these are God stories, and that's where we got in trouble. And just to touch on your point, because I'm sure there's a break coming up, that we need to go back and say, wait a minute, this is not a God story. What kind of God would behave this way? And what's really going on here? Those are the conversations, because, you know, primitive Judaism was not monotheistic. They didn't become monotheistic till around the 6th or 8th century BCE when they rewrote. Most scholars agree with this. When they rewrote some of the scriptures and they made Yahweh the one and only true God. It wasn't polytheistic because we had many gods, even the 10 Commandments. You can't have any other gods before me. I'm jealous God. Well, why you got to be jealous? Why are you insecure? Yeah. But there were other gods. There was Chemosh. There was Baal. There was Asherah. And they were henotheistic. What does that mean? It means that I believe in many gods, but I'm going to worship this one. I'm not going to worship Chemosh. I'm not going to worship Baal. I'm not going to worship the woman Asherah. I love him, but I'm going to stick over here. So they're henotheistic, which is that they recognize that there are other gods, but I'm going to roll with this one. Those are the conversations we need to be having.
And you kind of touched on this earlier, and I kind of want to go into this as well. So talking about you sitting down with other religious leaders, because I consider you that, because you're over a congregation. You sit down with the religious leaders of different faiths. What's the focus of those type of conversations behind closed doors? I'm sure a lot of people want to know, when you're with other reverends and you guys are sitting down talking about how we need to approach this and address this. What is that conversation like behind those closed doors?
I'll tell you what it's like. It's very difficult. It's very tedious for the reasons that we talked about at the top of the hour, that it's just too much. People cannot handle this. And some of these religious leaders can't handle it either. They cannot do it. And that's why it's one of the reasons I think it's taking so long, that these are conversations not for the faint of heart, because I'm sure people are saying, okay, Michael, what about God? What about God? You know, that's a decision that you're going to have to work through, rather than having me tell you that. I happen to believe something greater than myself because I've experienced that. But I can't tell you what that is. But that's when you grow up, when you don't depend on Reverend Carter or your priest or your rabbi or what have you. We can be guides, but we can tell you what's going on here, that we live in a populated universe, that life is all around us. You got beings that can come in your home and they don't even need a ship. Some of them will come and visit you without, they don't even need bodies, some of them. They're just energy beings. See, we don't even talk about that much. And so now you got to say, okay, whoa, boy, I need to go back and rethink what I believe, because the unexamined faith is not worth having.
Yeah. And is within any field, there's going to be, and currently in religion, there's definitely a group of like charlatans, grifters who care about money.
Yeah.
So knowing that there is a group that has those motivations, how do you think they affect this conversation? Because they're not, obviously they don't really care about the where we go with it. They care about the money. Yeah. So how do we get them out of the conversation, or how do we approach that?
Well, I think that a wise rabbi once said 2,000 years ago that by their fruits you shall know them. You're always going to have that. There's stories in the Bible about people. I think it's in the book of Acts. This guy's name is Magus, or whatever. He's a healer. He's kind of greedy. And I think he falls down from a heart attack or something. Anyway, I can go back and look. But I think you're always going to have people who are going to be susceptible to charlatans, always. And you can't do anything about that, because some people are like sheep.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that's just the way it is. Doesn't make them bad people, but some people are really gullible and they're going to be preyed upon, no pun intended. But I think once we give people some options that you can use common sense, do you really think that a God who needs to send ships out on patrol, like it's in Nehemiah, the chariots are on patrol and they're going to go back and tell the Lord what's going on? But if I'm God, I don't need you to do recon. I don't need you to do reconnaissance for me. When you go back and start, that verse really doesn't make sense to me. What does it say in Hebrew? What does it say here? You know what I'm saying? To let people be the intelligent beings that they are and walk them through this. And it may take a while. I think that would be the gift that keeps on giving, because again, the more you lie, and let's say you didn't do it on purpose, you just got tangled up, got it. But the more you do it, then the more lies you have to do to keep covering it up. And then you got people who, Sunday, I'm going to sleep late. I'm going to read the Times, with nothing wrong with that. Let's just stay home and make love. I'm going to go get brunch. Nothing wrong with that. But I do that too sometimes when I'm off. But people say I can find it elsewhere. And you know what, Rob? They can. You don't have to go into a church to worship and to be the only way you can commune. You can meditate, you can pray, you can be out in nature. Okay. You can contemplate, you can meditate, you can do yoga, you can do tantra. There's other ways. And I think that people are saying, yeah, if I'm going to keep getting the BS, if I'm going to keep getting the hypocrisy, you walking left and talking right, you're accusing me of keeping guilt on me and keep me paying, praying, and obeying, which is what Yahweh and some of these beings were doing. I'd rather stay home.
What is your gut feeling? What is your gut feeling for the outcome of humanity? So say we don't have this conversation. People are saying, the religious part, we don't need to have that conversation. It's not important.
Oh my God.
What are the differences in the outcomes potentially of not having the conversation before disclosure versus having
it? Great question. I think that, and I feel that if we don't have this conversation, people will go into nihilism. They'll go into despair. They'll just use all hope. I get the anger at religion. I get it. I was angry. But there's a lot of good that can come out of religion, out of good religion, not dysfunctional religion, not religion where I'm going to try and fleece you and get your dollar out of your pocket, or, you know, gonna lay up with your wife and all, I'm the minister and all that. No. But there's a lot of good that comes from religion. Some religious people transformed this country. I'm talking about Dr. King. I'm talking about Howard Thurman. I'm looking at the Mother Teresas of the world. I'm looking at those folk, Cornel West, Dr. Cornel West, those kind of folk. And so there is good that can come out of religion. But if it's dysfunctional religion, if it's disorganized religion, if it's disorganized government, you wind up with chaos, which is, you know, we're starting to see a little bit of that now. You know, that the institutions don't have the trust of the people. That the 11th commandment is thou shalt not get caught. I can do whatever I want to you, as long as I don't get caught. You know, if I steal now, that's not, I embezzled. I embezzled, but you know, you robbed me. Come on.
Yeah.
So you start to see this kind of domino effect, and again, religion can contribute to that if it's just as screwed up as the rest of everything else. But Dr. King was a very religious person in the Baptist tradition. Gandhi was a devout Hindu. Are we going to say these people are bad religious people? They transformed the planet that we live on. So we have to not paint everybody with a broad brush. And that goes with extraterrestrials too. Some of these brothers and sisters they want to see what planet Earth's going to do, how Project Earth going to turn out. Why not? They started it. They want to see, let's see what the return on the investment is. Let's see if they can grow. Let's see if they can change. And then you got a group of extraterrestrials who probably, you know, want to keep us in this low energy vibratory state. They want to, you know, like they did in Eden, in the Garden of Eden, they want to keep you so ignorant you didn't know you were naked.
Yeah.
You didn't even know you were naked. You're just walking around.
The way I'm seeing it is like with religion, that we will having that religious conversation, which we have to have, will allow us to at least have some structure in as far as what's right, what's wrong.
Yeah.
Instead of just sending 8 billion people out there to do their own devices, it is just, I don't think it works. So with that being said, we're going to get into more of this conversation with the Reverend Michael J. Carter right after this break, guys. It's been a good one. Don't go anywhere. I promise. We'll be right back.
Conversations that move the needle.
Conversations that move the needle.
You're listening to After Hours with Mr. Rob G on the only place where you can own the night. Spaced Out Radio.
Spaced Out Radio.
You've tuned your dial to the right frequency.
All right, we are clear, and Reverend, we're off camera for 5 minutes. I'll see you in a minute.
Okay, brother. I'm going to go bring a book down that I want to tell you about.
Okay.
Okay.
right, everybody. Welcome back. Spaced Out Radio, the After Hours Radio Show. Will be your host, Mr. Rob G. We have about 30 seconds left before we come back from the radio break. This is the hour where your questions will be asked, and I have been tagging some, so make sure you continue to put them in the chat. I'm going to keep my eye out. Just make sure they're in all caps, and we'll ask them to the Reverend right on the back half of this hour. We're getting into really good stuff. Once again, guys, if you missed any of the conversation, you know what you can do. As well as you can go to spacedoutradio.com and check out our swag. We don't have our swag. Let's go. Okay. Yeah, program issue. We'll be back. Give it just 1 second here. All right, everybody, welcome back. Spaced Out Radio, the After Hours Radio Show. We are in After Hour number 2 with the Reverend Michael J. Carter talking UFOs and religion. The conversation before disclosure, a very important app. Make sure that you don't go anywhere. This hour is going to be awesome. If you miss any of the conversation, hop in the archive. It's free, youtube.com/the Spaced Out Radio, as we go ahead and get right back into what we were doing before. So, just kind of going into this, Reverend. So some people look at the phenomenon as evil. Some are accepting of it. We know that. So sitting at the table together, what would be, if you had both of those groups in front of you and we needed to come to some sort of, compromise, what would be the message that you would deliver in that moment, and how would it be delivered?
I would. Okay, and let me, before I answer that, I want to be, I skimmed over something. There are people, there are ministers, there are professors who know what we're talking about is true, but they can't come out and say it. They would lose their tenure. They would lose their livelihoods. I do have people who say, Michael, I believe everything you're saying. I can't say it, and I don't blame them. So I want to be clear, too, with that. There are people who say, I know what you're saying. I feel that we would have to go through, it's almost like unindoctrinating people. I don't know if that's such a word, unindoctrinating. Anyway, that the compromise would have to be that we can agree to disagree. But one thing we do know is that we are being visited. And I would not even use the word visited, that we were invaded. I mean, let's call it what it is. You can say we were visited, but we were invaded. Some people came from another place and they came to our planet and, had sex with the women and started governments and stuff like that. But I think that would be the bottom line, because we can't even compromise now without the UFO thing. You know what I mean? My God's
right.
Bigger than yours. I'm right and you're wrong. So that would have to, we could have those conversations, but we can't get stuck there. But one thing we can agree on, that we are not alone, that we have been visited / invaded. And where do we go from here? How do we, because we're not all going to agree, but how do we get this information out to the public? And I think, and I'm an experiencer and a clergy person, so I do have a little insight to what that experience feels like. And I would say that we need to go back to our the books, especially monotheism, Islam, Judaism, Christianity, and go back and tediously go back, look at those stories and unpack those stories, because they're right there. And so how do we do that? Not how do we do it, but that's where I would start. Because that's where people are getting their deep-held convictions from childhood up. These stories where we were told that these were God stories. And when we go back and look over this with the extraterrestrial lens, we start to see that these are anything but. Now, I'm talking about the Old Testament. The New Testament, one mountain at a time. Certainly, the God that Jesus is talking about, whom he calls Father, is a very different person than the Old Testament God. Okay, so those are two different things, but we would have to unpack those stories too. If your father's human, if your mother's human and your daddy isn't, are you human? It's just a question. You know what I mean? Because we have those stories in the Greek, in the Greek pantheon. You have Alexander the Great. His father was supposed to have been a god. You see that, they have children. They call them titans. Okay, we call them hybrids. So, because it's all in our culture, and we need to go back and relook at and look at those stories for what they are. And that's not going to happen right away, but that's where I would start, at least in Western culture. Because that's where the Bible is the foundation, right or wrong. But look at all these other stories. You can go to the Hindus, and we can look at their stories. We can go to the Enuma Elish. We can go to the Mesopotamians. Because the Mesopotamian folks, they didn't have any problems not being monotheistic. Their universe was these gods. Abraham came from Samaria. He came from Ur. They knew about these beings. Western culture had to say, no, we got to get rid of some of these beings, and it's only going to be one. It's going to be Yahweh. But they didn't have a problem with that. They knew that we lived in a populated universe. You just dealt with it.
So let me ask you this. So,
I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. And so we have, and I want to say this because just for the people who come in and say, oh my gosh, okay, we have a reverend here talking about marrying the extraterrestrial concept with religion. Like, how does that even work? How do you talk to those people? Like, how do you tell them how it actually fits like a glove?
Well, I would say this. No, I'm just saying. I'm just looking at the research. Do the research yourself. Don't just take my word for it. But when you look at the research, when you look at people who came before me, I stand on the shoulders of Zachariah Sitchin, Eric, Brother Van Donigan. They were saying this before, and it's not me saying it. The scriptures say it. Exactly. The scriptures say. That's why I wanted to bring this book down on the break. It's called God's Bible. It's by Mauro Biglino. And I probably butchered his name. He's an Italian man. He worked. Okay, hold on. I'll put it up. He worked for the Vatican. He was fired. He was an interpreter. He speaks Hebrew. He speaks Aramaic. He speaks Latin. And they fired him because of what he was interpreting. He was just reading the story. I shouldn't say what it was, what it is. It's got the Hebrew in here, so you don't have to speak Hebrew. It's there for you. This is a game changer. And so, he doesn't get into religion. Believe, I think he's a Mason, but I'm not sure. But he says, I'm not going to get into the religion because that's personal. I'm just going to tell you what the scripture says. And you get a chance to figure it out. I buy it. If you are serious about the subject, get this. And so I'm not saying it. And I'm not saying it fits like a glove. I'm saying that from my research, people I've studied, Paul Anthony Wallace, Zachariah Sitchin, Eric, the list goes on, that these beings were mistaken for gods because of their technology. And so when you start reading the scriptures, you see that, and these beings fought among themselves. They weren't wispy little religious people. And no, they got drunk. They carried on. And so if I was following Yahweh, and let's say Yahweh was fighting Kamash or Baal, I'm fighting these people because they carved up the earth. Go back and look at Deuteronomy 32. When it tells about the Lord, which is a misinterpretation, it's the Elohim carved up certain areas in the Levant. Yahweh got the tribe of Jacob, because when you got the land, you got the people on the land as well. And his tribe, they didn't have any land. So that means Yahweh wasn't a big commander. He was a military person. He was a warrior. And so that's why he's fighting everybody, to get land, to get respect. It's still happening today. There's certain people who don't have any land. That's what was happening then.
If we were ready to, which I think we are ready, but if we
you see what I'm saying?
If we were setting this conversation up, because obviously going back to this religion domino has to fall. It has to be part of the conversation before we get to disclosure. So if we had a meeting place set up to have this conversation, who would you send invites out to? Obviously, humanity's there, religious leaders are there. Who else would you be sending invites out to? Like, who else do you think is ultra important to include in that conversation?
Well, I would say heads of state. I would make it transparent. You could stream it, you could watch it, because everybody's not going to. That's what I would do first of all. That's what I would do. That everybody has access to seeing it. Now, you may not want to. You may say, I got to work that day, or I don't want to hear all that mess that man's talking about. But you'd have access to it. But definitely heads of state. Why? Because we touched on the political. When you got Congress and you got the Pentagon, they can't share information. That's dysfunctional. It's almost unheard of. Okay, and I'm using the contemporary time. So because religion and heads of state, they meld together. There's a separation of church and state. Well, that's not happening so much anymore. But you can't have one without the other. And I would say go back and look at those stories. Look at the biblical stories. Go back and look at with the Native Americans and Aboriginal peoples of Australia and Africa, because that's how some of these beings came down. They taught us how to do animal husbandry. They taught us how to make weapons. Some of them taught us about government and numbers, and that's how civilization was started. So it's all political, and I mean that in a positive way, in the sense of we've stopped being hunter-gatherers. Okay, next thing you know, we're in the Bronze Age, and I'm jumping, but you see, we learned government because that's the way they set it up. That's how we learned from them. Now, that doesn't let us off the hook, but when you look at government, especially in the West, you have God or the gods. You have a king, right? And then you have your religious leaders, and then you have, your everyday people, post office, people working. That's that pyramid. Well, we got that from them when they taught us how to set up governments. Because remember, they were ruling, then they left. Maybe their offspring. So you had the demigods, you had the hybrids. You look at the king's list, the Sumerian king's list, the Egyptian king's list. Nobody human can rule someplace for 200,000 years, 150,000 years. That gives you a clue that these people weren't human. And so then they had offspring who mated with earth women. So now I'm a hybrid. My daddy's Elohim, my mom's human. So now I'm ruling. Okay, and then you see like in Exodus. Okay, so what does Yahweh do? Michael, you've been really obedient. You and Rob and y'all, you're going to be the priest. You're going to control this. I'm behind you. Do you see the hierarchy that's starting to be formed? That's how we have priests and stuff like that. So we got our system of government. We've got the way we treat each other sometimes. We got that from the gods. So then when you read the Bible, after a while, Yahweh fades out. So now you got the high priests. This is the way you rule. This is the way you want to do it. And guess what? The priests are going to rule the people the way they see the king rule. Okay? So now they're corrupt. Now they're drunk with power. They're not treating everybody well. It's the story. It's over and over and over again. And then you have some teachers who come, like a Yeshua, right? Like a Buddha, like and we don't have to go that far back. We can go back further, that they have the consciousness is raised. So they come and start to tell the people, you know what? You don't need those people anymore. You don't need that. There's something in you. That's the hero's journey. Even for people who don't believe that Jesus was who he said he was, you look at that story, that's everybody's story. I'm born. I don't know who I am. All right. I believe what everybody tells me I am. And then as I get a little older, I start to go, wait a minute. There's something unique about me. There's something special about me. But then you got the world and all these people trying to keep you down. That's what was happening to Jesus. When he was younger, and we don't know whether he was in India or whatever, but then he gets this, I have the Christ consciousness. I have whatever it is. Now we're powerful. I'm not like what my mom told me I was. I'm not like what society told me I was. I'm bigger than that. I'm connected to something larger than that.
Yeah.
That's the hero's journey. That's the Shiro's journey.
And I think that's actually a great place to pivot, because understanding that you're bigger than what society has kind of led you to believe you are, and once
makes you dangerous,
that realization, and it makes you dangerous. And this whole time, and I'm kind of going to touch on this a little bit, but kind of not, but kind of, there's been, we understand there's a UFO cover up, and this goes back to at least Roswell, and we've had JFK cover ups.
Yeah.
And so you are talking about a barrier that there's people on this side of the conversation who we can never touch, we can never see, never know who they were. They pull the strings, they do all this. We're just down here as the citizens, just going along with whatever we're being told. I never thought within my lifetime that I would see a moment where those people behind the curtains would be exposed. And as we're seeing in this moment, regardless what anyone thinks, we have this whole news thing going on right now where those people in those positions are technically being exposed, or we're seeing behind the curtain. And it's strange, because it's a strange feeling, because it makes something that you thought was untouchable, touchable, and attainable. And so that means going back to any cover up that we've ever had previously, that there's a possibility that we could get some light shed on the UFO subject, or whatever information they had on this the whole time. And then everything else, it makes me feel like there is the chance that we can actually know what they've been hiding and what they know. And I think it's a beautiful moment. And I don't know what you think about that, or how you feel about that.
I don't believe that we will ever get the truth. I think people are waking up to, the president doesn't run the country. Never did. Roosevelt said back in the 30s that presidents are selected, not elected. You've heard various people say that if voting worked, they wouldn't let you do it. Now, I'm not saying don't vote. I'm just saying that there's a lot of different ideas about that. But the president doesn't run the country. And so, and I don't think we're glimpsing behind, because there are people who don't want to be seen. But we are getting it that, wait a minute, that could be a little bit of a scam going on here. I think we're waking up to that. But there are people who still think that one man or woman gets in that office and in 4 years, they're going to change everything. Putin said something a few months back with his crazy self, but they're all crazy. But he said, I've survived a couple of your presidents. So let me tell you how it works. They get elected. They got all these plans. they run for office and they say, I'm going to do A, B, C, D. He said, so when they get elected, they go into a room. They sit down. Two people come in, two guys in dark suits and a tie. They come in with a briefcase. They open the briefcase and they say to your president, this is what you're going to do.
Mm-hmm.
This is what you're going to do.
Yep.
And people don't realize that they think the president runs the country. They don't get it, that corporations run the country. That when I'm watching a Democrat and a Republican debate an issue, they don't realize that the same person is paying both of them. You know, right. They don't realize that's the corruption. They don't realize what Hayam Mashed was talking about, the former brigadier general of Israel, when he came out and he said that there is a galactic federation. They don't get it when he says that there's some extraterrestrials who don't want disclosure. They haven't read the book, The Secret Commonwealth, that was written by a Presbyterian brother back in the 1800s. And he was researching what Native people in Ireland, you know, what they were talking about, and they didn't believe it, but he started listening to them, and they were talking about fairies and elves and beings who levitated and what have you. He wound up being murdered, but he wrote a book called The Secret Commonwealth. Get it on Amazon. And what he came to realize was that every government well, how did he put it? That unless you finally get it, that there's an extraterrestrial influence in everything that happens on this planet. I thought that was far out. I was like, come on. But you know, everything has been a lie. And so he comes out and he says that. Hayam Mashed said that in 2009. So that means that people gather around the table and they're talking about you and me and our listeners here, not by name. See, I want to be at that table. I mean, not literally, but if you're talking about us, how come we don't know what you're saying? How come we don't know what you're saying?
Yeah.
There are people talking about us and making decisions about our lives, and some of them are human, and according to Hayam Mashed and the brother who wrote The Secret Commonwealth, and some of them are not human. But we think Trump is running the country. We think Obama was running the country. We think Bush was running the country. Yes, you got 2 years. We'll give you a little library when you finish. You got to be known for something. So you're going to do Obamacare. What you going to do? You're going to do you may Nixon. You opened up roads to China. You're going to be known for something, but there are other things that you don't get to do that we tell you what to do, and that's how it works.
I think one of the biggest revelations is the label conspiracy theory obviously came out with the CIA years ago as they attempted to make us feel like we didn't know what we knew. And in this moment right now is the first time that we've always assumed that there's string pullers behind these scenes. Mm-hmm. And this is, I think, the first time that we actually have confirmation of the fact. So it's no longer we have a good idea that there's a shadow government. We actually now know that there's a group back there that's pulling the string. There is this actual group back there. They are doing things like pulling strings and setting things up.
Yeah. And it's a small group of people. When you get that book, The Secret Commonwealth, what you come out with is this. You can tell. Also with the Bible too, you can tell when whoever's ruling is non-human because the policies become more and more draconian. The policies become more and more cruel. The policies become more and more violent or what have you because they're not human. And they don't know what it's like to be human. And you go to people, how could somebody do that? How could somebody make legislation like that? How could somebody do? Because someone behind them is telling them. This is what
We're going to hold it right there. We're coming right back after the break with the Reverend Michael J. Carter. Guys, don't go anywhere. All right, we are clear, and you can continue that thought if you want.
Yeah, that's what I got from the book, and even looking at, just putting the pieces together. Yahweh's rules were really, really draconian. You couldn't marry; you had to be circumcised. You couldn't. There's one story where one of the kings or someone got a I should have just was sick, and he went to another Elohim, and Yahweh said, is there no Elohim here who could help you? And so he said you're going to die for that. You know what I'm saying? But we read these as God stories, and when you read them as God stories, then you can't critique them. But you have to say, what kind of God would do that? Hey, man, I got a bad back. I just asked this brother here or this sister here to hook me up, and you're going to kill me because of that?
Yeah.
Come on. What kind of behavior is that? So that's, again, I go back to those stories. And maybe next time I can give you chapter and verse. I have them all here on my phone, because for these kind of conversations, that's what we have to change our whole paradigm about what these stories mean. And who are we really? Aren't we about love? Aren't we about loving our neighbor, at least trying to? Aren't we about trying to create a better world? Aren't we about, we want our kids to be educated. We want to be safe. We want to lead a good life. That's what it means to be human, at least on this planet. I don't know, maybe on some other planet. So we would have, what we're talking about is a paradigm shift, And so, listen, you go to the New Testament. These brothers and sisters, they follow Jesus, but they knew there were other beings in the universe. What's the thing in Hebrews? That scripture that says, be kind to strangers because you may be entertaining angels unaware. That tells you two things: that they knew there were other beings out there, and it tells you that they look like us. Yeah. Because if I'm entertaining a stranger who could be an ET or another being, but I don't know, I can't tell, because that means they probably some of them look like us. Okay? Be kind to strangers because you may be entertaining angels unawares. Just put ET there instead of angels. Yeah,
and I'm going to say this now, and I'm going to say it also after the break, but I'm just, when we talk about getting to disclosure, that being our goal, and then this conversation that we need to have prior to that, is just that when we've always talked about disclosure, that also involved exposing and changing the power structure and the way things work. And one of those, one of the ways that one of the cards that has to fall in order to do that is exposing or at least opening the door to the string pullers. And it's just in a situation right now where you would have that door to the string pullers has been cracked open, and it literally is right there. So all the things that we need to get to disclosure, you're kind of there. And it's like, it makes it even more, plausible. It makes me more optimistic that we'll actually get to disclosure and have that moment.
Yes. Yeah. Well, you know what? And I love listening to you, Rob, because I'm hearing this optimism and this excitement. And this is an exciting time to be alive for many, 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 many reasons. And people are waking up. People are starting to see behind the BS. People are starting to see the wizard behind the curtain, and they just say it's just a little person. Yeah, so people are waking up, and it makes for rough times. There's turbulence, because an old way of looking at stuff, it has to end. And then you got people who want to keep the old way because I'm making money from the old way, or because I feel safe and secure with the old way. I'm not giving this up. And so then you have that clash and you have that tension, and nothing can change, until, you have to have that tension and create something new. And I think that we have I'm going to get that book for them. We have an opportunity here. We have an opportunity as human beings to decide where we want to go. Hold on, you see?
Yeah, we have about 30 seconds before we come back.
Okay.
Yeah, guys, your questions are coming up here.
Yeah, I got the book. The book is by Robert Kirk. Robert Kirk, The Secret Through, because it's old time English, but this guy, he wound up murdered. He was a Presbyterian minister. They killed him. Him.
Robert Kirk. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, we got 8 seconds left before we come back here.
I'll see you in 8 seconds, not 10 seconds.
All right, here we go. All right, everybody, welcome back. Spaced Out Radio, the After Hours radio show. Me, your host, Mr. Rob G. We are back with our guest, the Reverend Michael J. Carter. We've been getting deep tonight, and I told you it was going to be that way. We always do that here. We'll continue to do it. If you missed any of the conversation that we've had so far, jump in the archive, youtube.com/the Spaced Out Radio. As we go ahead and get ready to address some of your questions, we are going to do that here right now. But first, I just wanted to make a statement to the Reverend, because I said this during the break, and I just want to put this on record for the radio audience as well. It's just that, we've gone being labeled as conspiracy theorists for the last 80 years. They put the label on us, and I think we're just in a moment right now where we can now get rid of that term finally, because we have a moment, leading up to disclosure. One of the cards that had to fall was being able to open up the door to those string pullers. And it seems like that has cracked open in this moment. So now we're no longer labeled conspiracy theorists, because we know that there are people that pull strings behind the scenes. And now going backwards, maybe we can get some resolution on some of these other things. But going forward, for sure, there's no way in the world that they could just say, oh, you guys are conspiracy theorists. We're at a point where we have all the prerequisites to kind of bring in disclosure. And I just wanted to put that on record. And if you wanted to say something to that, you can.
Yeah. No, I think you're right. And I also think that they can call us what they want, but we don't care anymore, because we know. You know what I mean? Now we know, because things are being revealed. So before, that's how you shut somebody down. Conspiracy theorists. Now it's like, no, you can call me that, but look at the data. Connect the stories that you're seeing in the news. And all of them aren't true, but a lot of them shed light on a lot of things. So I think, and that's what I mean. People talk about being woke. I'm not talking about, I'm not going to get into that conversation, but I'm just using the phrase, people are waking up. We're not asleep anymore. We're noticing what goes on around us. And so that's the beginning of when you start to see a society start to change.
Yes.
That's the beginning. But that change not only can be scary, but it scares other people who want to keep the status quo.
That is fact. Now we're jumping into our first audience question here from Jules, saying, I've always wondered why in Genesis they mentioned that in such and such a place the goal was good. When God created everything, he should know exactly what is good where, right?
Yeah, I'm not kind of getting that, Jules. Yeah, first of all, I would say, yeah. If it's this, here's something, Jules. No, there is no word in the Hebrew language that means that omniscient, omnipotent, omnipresent. That's what we say God is. There's no Hebrew word for that. So I think that's what you're trying to get to, that if God is all that, then why, you just connect the dots. Then why would he not know this? Or why would this happen? And so, and that's the beginning of waking up. You're just asking questions. And that's big, because when I was coming up, if I asked a question, Well, if David is fighting them and they're fighting David, whose side is God on? Oh, we don't ask that question, Michael. Well, you troublemaker?
Mm-hmm.
Go sit over there. Go sit over there. Take your stuff and go sit over. We don't ask that. See, and we were raised with that. At least I was. I'm 68 years old. But now we're throwing that off. We're going to ask the questions. The questions are more important than the answers. So I see. I got a question for you. It's rhetorical. If you go to Numbers 31, verses 17 to 18, why does Yahweh want to keep the virgin girls? Now, it's rhetorical. We're not going to go into that. But that's another clue. If I'm the omniscient, omnipresent, omnipotent God, why am I collecting the spoils of war, but I want to keep the virgin girls for me? I didn't make it up. I just gave you chapter and verse. Look it up. It's right there. But we weren't told to look at those stories like that. You don't, what? You don't have, what? Come on. And that's what we're doing now. We're starting to ask the questions. We're starting to go deeper. We're starting to think for ourselves.
Yeah.
And that's what's exciting, but it's also what makes you dangerous.
Great stuff. Great stuff. Super Crazy Movie Geek is asking you, what do aliens think about all our religions?
Wow, great question. I don't know the answer to that, but I do know that if you read, again, if you go back to Billy Meyer, a lot of Billy Meyer stuff when he's dealing with the Palladians, they can be kind of harsh too, but they just think it's primitive. They just think, and only because the religions, because we say we believe this and then we kill each other. So it's not a really deep thing. And I think, and I'll reiterate this, Super Crazy Movie Geek, that we based our religions on them. And they didn't have time to say, hey, come on. If you go in Acts and there was one guy, Peter, and they healed someone and they saw Peter and Paul coming, and a guy got down on his knees and Peter said, no, don't do that. Stand up. I'm like you. They didn't have time for that. If you think I'm a God, okay, but I got a message. So, but people like Yahweh and a lot of these other extraterrestrials, they wanted that. They wanted the subservience. And that's how we got here today. We're subservient, we're praying, and obeying because we were taught that. We weren't taught to think from ourselves. So when these avatars and saints and messiahs and these people come along, they're saying, whoa, no. What you're seeking for outside of you is already in you. And that's how things start to change. It's evolution. It's evolution. So I can't tell you what all of them think about our religions. Again, I look at Billy Meyer's story and others where they say that this is superstition, because what they're saying is any God you see out there is also in you. And where have we heard that before? Any God out there is the same God that's in you. But we've been taught that everything is outside of us. If you go back and say, I was watching something on Facebook the other day, Morgan Freeman, they were interviewing him about what he believed, that he believed in God. He said, I believe in myself. And the woman almost fell off the chair. Now, he never said he didn't believe in God, but what he was saying is that God is in me.
Yeah.
But when you hear, you see what they did to this rabbi 2,000 years ago. But when you say that, people think you're being arrogant.
Yeah.
They think you're being blasphemous. But he said that the kingdom of heaven is within you. It's within you.
I like that, and I believe that as well. Miss Catherine Jones is asking you, if ET influences world governments, are the leaders aware?
Hey, Miss Catherine, yeah. They are aware. That's what the Secret Commonwealth is saying. That's what Hayam Mashed is saying, that there is a galactic federation and that there's some ETs that want disclosure and some don't. And Miss Catherine, you and I talked, with Brother Bledsoe, Chris. What's he saying with the lady that basically what I'm hearing is that if we don't disclose, ETs will. That's why we got all this. What's going to happen in 2025? I heard some 2026, 2027. Something is speeded up. And so what does that tell us? That tells us that in some ways, Ms. Catherine and listeners, that disclosure is not up to us. Disclosure is up to them. Disclosure is up to them. And if we don't hurry up, they'll do it. They'll do it.
Super Crazy Movie Geeks asking you, did aliens create humanity on Earth?
According to the Mesopotamian text and according to the book of Genesis and other Aboriginal stories, Africa, Aboriginal stories in Australia, yes, they created us, taught us civilization, taught us how to go from animal husbandry to building streets, to building a banking system. In some stories, they taught us how to make beer. Ben Franklin said, beer is God's way of saying he loves us. According to those, what we will label myths, go to the book of Enoch, where they taught us how to make weapons. They taught us how to work with crystals. They taught us how to work with cosmetics. They taught us so many things. Genesis, let us create man in our image. The Garden of Eden may have been a laboratory as opposed to just some garden but they created us. Now, again, I want to be clear, that doesn't mean that there is no ultimate creator, because you have to say, well, who created them? But yes, they had a hand in creating us. Homo sapiens, sapiens. Yeah.
All right. We have the Jaquetta, who is asking, do you feel or think some religious leaders want to keep people take the word verbatim with simple description for control? Want to keep people.
Okay. Do you think some religious leaders want to keep people? Now, okay, Mr. Jaquetta, I think there are some religious and political leaders who want to keep us ignorant, that want to keep us fighting each other about what color we are, about who we sleep with, I think that there are people, because they benefit from that. And so the Bible has been used for control. We saw it in times of slavery and Jim and Jane Crowism. We see it now. We see how it's been used. You can use the Bible to justify anything you want. So I hope I'm answering your question. But I'm saying that if you go back and look at gods of the Bible, I haven't read Hebrew since I was in seminary, and it's all right here. You will see the difference between what we've been taught and what it says. And he doesn't tell you what to believe. He just tells you, read this. This is the Hebrew. And remember, you're going to have to read it from, it's translated from right to left, and then you get to decide. But if I think I'm answering your question, are there some religious leaders, I would add political leaders as well, who want to keep us in control, don't want you reading this, don't want you looking at Zachariah Stitchin's work, don't want you looking at Eric Van Doniken. Yes, because when you are educated, what do governments, when I go conquer a country, who do I get rid of? The intellectuals. I got to get rid of them because they're going to teach you to think. I got to get rid of the educators. I got to get rid of, the political structure as well, because an uneducated populace is easier to control. So I'm going to cut education. I'm going to cut funding for schools. I'm going to look at what I can do with these student loans and stuff. You don't want an educated populace. And then I can tell you what's the government. I tell you what's real. I'll tell you what's fake and what isn't. It's been happening for thousands of years. This is not new, but it works.
All right. Super Crazy is back in the building again, saying, What do you think God thinks about alien abducting humans? In God's eyes, are the aliens doing wrong?
Oh, super crazy movie geek. I have no idea what God thinks. And I'm not as arrogant to sit up here and tell you what God thinks and what God sees through their eyes. I have no idea what a God would think about that. I would imagine, though, to keep us from being too, I don't want to say uppity, but what we do to animals, we take animals and we tag them, or I take my dog to the vet. He probably thinks, what the hell is going on here? But I'm trying to tell him, I'm doing this because you're sick. Or you need, I'm doing this because this is going to help you. I know the needle hurts. I know they got to take the blood. I know, but I'm trying to do this to help you. It's a crude comparison, but, maybe they have maybe some of these ETs have a different sense of ethics or morality. Was it Betty Andreasson? Anyway, someone said to one of these ET brothers who took them, I can't say, you don't have a right to do this. Why are you doing this to me? You don't have a right. And you know what the ET said? We do have a right. We do have a right.
Derek Galloway is asking us, Reverend Michael Carter, why does it seem there aren't as many African-American non-human intelligence encounter reports?
Ooh. Well, Ms. Catherine, are you listening? I think there are many reasons. I think there are, what information is privileged by the dominant culture has something to do with it. I also think, and I wish my brother Roderick was here, he says it so eloquently, that we are not always as open about it. Because of church, because of culture, because of the stigma that we already have, and then we're going to come out and say that we saw ETs. I think there are a lot of factors. I love when people ask that question. But that's what I think, and let me be clear. I'm trying to word it in a way. I think there's also the dominant culture. There's race involved. I'll put it like that. Sure. There's race involved. I also think in growing up in the church that it goes against, that doctrine, and people think you're crazy. There's a stigma. And I also think that we don't want to put ourselves out there all the time because of that stigma. But I will say this real quick. Not all people of color, but a lot of us, we don't have the ontological shock that maybe sometimes our white brothers and sisters have. Why? Because we don't always have to have science approve it. There's a spirituality there that we kind of know that there's a an invisible world. We know that. We were brought up with that. We've encountered that. And so whereas other people are seeking proof, I need you to validate this for me. A lot of folk of color, it's just a given that, of course, we're not the only people here. My mom had a dream the other day, or my mom, my grandmother told me she had a dream. It was psychic or whatever. We kind of accept those things, generally speaking now, not all. And so it doesn't always, affect us the way it may affect the dominant culture, because it has to be scientifically proven.
All right.
Hope that helped.
You did, for sure. We have Paramarv, and if I asked this already, Reverend Carton, would you care to weigh in on the aliens or demons demonic debate? If that's true, so many people find their health with ailments.
Yeah. Why do so many people find that? Well, I had a healing in 2013 by a blonde brother in my room. So this brother helped me. I had a blood clot. I think that I don't think they're all demons. I'll put it like that. And when you read the Bible, you will see that some of these beings were helpful. The being, the angel that frees Peter from prison. Remember, he knocks the wall down and Peter walks through the wall and he gets away when he's arrested. The being who helped Daniel when the lions are getting ready to have him for lunch. The beings who came to talk to Elizabeth, Jesus' mother's cousin, John the Baptist's mom. I got some news for you. Same thing with Mary. Miriam, you've been blessed and highly favored. I got a message. Let me tell you how it's going. So when Paul is shipwrecked, the angel comes and comforts him. So some of these beings care. You see it also in the Mesopotamian text because they had a hand in creating us. We want to see how you're growing. We want to see, how this experiment's going to turn out. And then you have other Anunnaki or Nephilim, or when you go to the Tower of Babel, right? And the Lord, they get upset, because they're building this tower. You got to read into the story. I don't think that they were angry because they were violating building codes. Some people say they were trying to build a ship or whatever. But what was the Elohim's reaction? Oh, look at them. Look at them. If we let them get away with this, there'll be nothing they can't do. So they come down. And what do? They confuse our languages. Okay? They tear down because they didn't want to see evolution. We just want to keep them, So I don't think they're all demons. I don't think they're all angels, no pun intended. They're like us. You got some good people, you got some bad people, you got some fools. And so I'll leave that there.
All right. We got 2 minutes left, 5 questions. So let's rapid fire these. Scott Rose is asking you, what was the manna machine?
I don't know what it was, but I will tell you that the Hebrew word means we don't know what this is. There's no definition for what manna really means. And when you try, it's like, we don't know what this is, but Yahweh was feeding them as they were going through the desert for 40 years. So whatever it was some sustenance that they were eating and he was providing for them.
All right. Jose Sanchez is saying, if we are all God's creations, then does that also include cryptids?
I would assume so.
Okay.
I would assume so.
We got Spiritually Awakened asking, are aliens or extraterrestrials helping humanity's awakening in any capacity?
I would say yes. I wrote a book called, a cheap plug, Initiation, The Spiritual Transformation of the Experiencer. You can get that on Amazon. It certainly helped me. It transformed me. I was already doing the work, but when my contacts expedited my spiritual growth by changing our consciousness, by letting us, allowing us to be open to the unknown, to be open to the different, to be open that there's more to life than just this 3D world that we live in, by letting us know that they've been here since the beginning of time. So, yeah.
All right. And then Seymour Glass, why have the biblical scholars realized the book of Acts of the Apostles to be wrong and embellished recently?
Well, I would say that I'm not familiar that they said it was wrong, but the Bible has been written and rewritten. And so, it wasn't dictated by a being. People wrote with agendas. When I was in seminary, and I went to one of the top seminaries in the country, we were taught to read the Bible like you read a newspaper. Who, what, when, where. Who, what, when, where, how. What is the agenda? What are they trying to tell us? What people are they speaking to?
All right. And we got 10 seconds. Tell everybody where they can find you.
Amazon, michaeljscarter.com is my website. My fan page is Reverend Michael J. Carter on Facebook. You can also go to Michael J. S. Carter on Facebook. I'm there. I'm on Instagram. My email is, you'll find all that out, and just write me. I'll write back to you.
All right, Reverend. Thanks for coming in. As always, you're awesome.
Mr. Rob G.
Talk to you, brother. Be
Yes,
careful.
sir. Take care.
God bless.
Spaced Out Radio.
Spaced Out Radio.
You've tuned your dial to the right frequency.
All right, we'll see you guys right back here for hour 3, coming up with Josh Rutledge filling in for Drew Banky. That was wrap up. It's going to be awesome. See you back here in just a minute. right, everybody. Welcome back. Space Out Radio After Hour number 3. We're going to have a fantastic hour. We got Steve Stockton, Tales Untold, Missing Person Mysteries coming up. And then Josh Rutledge filling in for Drew Banky with the After Hours wrap-up. Some UFO weird news. It's going to be an awesome hour. Don't go anywhere. We'll be back in 5 seconds here. Here we go. All right. About 5 more seconds here, it seems. All right, everybody, welcome back. Spaced Out Radio, the After Hours radio show, After Hour number 3. We want to go ahead and thank our guest, Reverend Michael J. Carter, for being awesome, stepping in, doing what he does. We're going to have an awesome hour coming up here. We have Steve Stockton, Tales Untold, Missing Person Mysteries. We have Josh Rutledge stepping in for Drew Banky with the After Hours wrap-up and some UFO and weird news. So let's go ahead and welcome the guy who talks to us every single night, Steve Stockton, Tales Untold, Missing Person Mysteries, and we appreciate him being a part of the After Hours radio show. As I always say, here we go. Let's get right on into it.
Welcome to Tales Untold and Missing Persons Mysteries on Spaced Out Radio's After Hours. My name is Steve Stockton, and I'm here to take you on a journey of mysteries, legends, and true stories. Come, join me on this strange adventure of Tales Untold and Missing Person Mysteries. Jordan Naderer. 25-year-old Jordan Naderer was reported missing on October 13th, 2020 from E.C. Manning Provincial Park, usually referred to as Manning Park, in British Columbia, Canada, about 200 kilometers east of Vancouver. Jordan was Memorial University engineering alumni and recent graduate of the University of British Columbia. It's believed he set out for a solo hike on Frosty Mountain Trail in the park, but that is unable to be confirmed. He was last seen leaving his downtown Vancouver apartment at Seymour and Nelson Streets, wearing black pants and white running shoes and carrying a large olive green backpack at around 7 a.m. on October 10th, 2020. Jordan is described as 5 feet 10 inches tall with a slim build and has short brown hair. When he didn't show up for Thanksgiving dinner with friends 2 days later on October 13th, the search began. His black 2016 Honda Civic was found in the Lightning Lake day use area of the park at the Frosty Mountain Trailhead. His bank records showed that he had bought a cup of coffee at the Manning Park Resort, giving the family verification as to where he was. Jordan's parents flew to Vancouver from their home in St. John's to help in the search. For 5 days, search and rescue teams from several parts of British Columbia combed the area by air and on foot. Several volunteers also helped out. However, on October 17th, the authorities decided to suspend the search, stating they had exhausted all avenues. This case has been surrounded by controversy, with the Canadian Prime Minister becoming involved after many people believe the search was called off too early. Investigators believe Jordan was on a hiking trip that went poorly. The family launched its own private search, hired a drone company, and paid for a helicopter. They also appealed to Vancouver Police Department to reactivate the search as soon as possible and get the thermal imaging helicopters and drones and dogs involved. Early in the initial search, crews found a bag that authorities didn't think belonged to Jordan. But then, on October 18th, Jordan's mother, Josie, identified the contents of the bag as her son's, which included a hat and a pair of Oakley sunglasses. Pieces of down material used in pillows and jackets were also found in the park. It was similar material Jordan used to make crafts and had been found at his apartment, according to his father, Greg Naderer, who also submitted that off-trail footprints had been found south of Frosty Peak in an area that wasn't well searched. Greg asked the RCMP to search the area east of Frosty Peak based on new clues found by a private tracker. Search and rescue teams from 3 different districts near Vancouver resumed the search on October 22nd, but after nearly a month, no sign of Jordan was found. Jordan remains missing, and there have been no further updates. Number 4, Bart Schleyer. 49-year-old Bart Schleyer is thought to have disappeared on September 14, 2004, from Reed Lakes, Yukon Territory, Canada. Bart was a famous and experienced outdoorsman who loved everything about the wilderness. He was a trained scientist, an avid hunter, and spent months at a time in the great outdoors. His dad was a physician who loved hunting and introduced him to the lifestyle early on. Bart's sister, Claudia Downey, said this of her brother. He didn't just like them, animals. He wanted to know everything about them, study where they lived and how they lived. My dad took Bart with him on safari to Mozambique when he was 10 years old. He had a chance to witness an incredible variety of animals that he could otherwise only read about. When he finally got a chance to hunt, he was drawn even closer. Hunting seemed to give purpose to his studies. Bart focused his education on wildlife biology and transferred to Montana State University and received his master's degree from there in 1979. Professor Don Collins, who taught an undergraduate class called Man and the Environment for more than 20 years, said, out of the 42,000 students who took that class, Bart was a standout. He was knowledgeable in everything wild, from animals and birds to flowers, trees, and shrubs. Bart spent a great deal of time alone in the mountains while working on his thesis, The Activity Patterns of Grizzly Bears in Yellowstone. It was as if he prepared his entire life to do this. He was superbly suited for the demands of the job. Bart organized the rest of his life so that he could spend as much time as possible out in the field. He used the traditional bow and arrows he fashioned himself. Needless to say, Bart felt right at home in the depths of the Canadian wilderness when he traveled there in 2004. And yet, his last contact was when a chartered float plane left him at the larger of the Reed Lakes in Canada's Yukon Territory on September 14. When his plane returned to pick him up 2 weeks later, Bart was gone. The man who could be described as a survival expert was nowhere to be found, which was odd because he was well prepared and had at least 2 weeks' worth of food in tow, as well as a tent and an inflatable boat. He was officially reported missing on September 30th, and the RCMP launched a comprehensive search but found nothing. According to the RCMP, Bart had lunch or supper in camp since there was food found that was still in the crate. He had used his boat and paddled it down the lake from camp. It was found around half a mile out. Mounties thought that Bart might have hiked to the highway and with deteriorating weather called it a day. Dib Williams, a friend of Bart's in Whitehorse, was dissatisfied with the RCMP's efforts and got his pilot friend Wayne Curry to fly them to the camp. The friends found that his tent had been knocked down, either by wind or animals, but his equipment was still there. They searched the area around the tent and found his backpack, bear spray, a knife, and a VHF radio. Dib and Wayne got increasingly concerned as they didn't buy the story that Bart would have hiked out when he left such key equipment behind. On the second day of their search, they found his bow near the inflatable boat. About 60 yards back in the woods from the boat, the bow and arrows and a handmade buckskin quiver were found leaning up against a tree next to a dry bag full of gear. This was flat ground, which was next to a thicket of black spruce and willows. An experienced moose hunter would say it looked like the type of place an archer might set up if moose calling. A little further on, they found a camouflaged face mask with blood and hair on it. At this point, they called the RCMP again. On October 3, the Mounties, Yukon conservation officers, and even civilian volunteers flew back to the area to begin a grid search. They only found bear and wolf tracks initially, but then a baseball cap was spotted, and then camouflage pants, a camera, part of a skull, and just a few small bones were all located. These items were all 60 meters or so from the bow and the spruce tree. Dental records matching the partial skull confirmed the remains did in fact belong to Bart. Most of his body was not recovered, and since there was grizzly excrement in the area, it fueled speculation that Bart had been unexpectedly killed and eaten by a bear. However, most of Bart's clothes were never found. Searchers were skeptical that a bear was at fault. First, there was no sign of a death struggle, no vegetation or ground disturbed. The remains were found in a little patch of sparse spruce lying on the moss, and if a bear killed him, this would be unusual, as they usually bury their kills in a cache, but there was no cache found in the area. Almost everyone who knew Bart believed he was simply too good a woodsman and stayed too alert while in the forest to have a bear surprise him. And if one had, it's even harder to imagine the animal killing him without leaving signs of a struggle on a site covered with soft, easily disturbed moss. The Vancouver pathologist who examined Bart's remains also found no tooth punctures in his skull and no scratch marks. The plastic container that held his food was left undisturbed, and bear experts said that if a grizzly had killed Bart, it is likely the same bear would have found his camp and rummaged through everything. Most people agree that the circumstances of Bart's disappearance are very strange, even if they disagree about the cause. Brigitte Parker, a spokeswoman for the Mounties and Whitehorse, said that Bart's case remains open, but the organization leans toward the idea that he was attacked and killed by a bear. There's no foul play suspected, she said. Everything at the scene suggested a bear attack and did not suggest foul play. Bart's exact cause of death remains unknown. Number 3, Gordon Segu. 50-year-old Gordon Segu disappeared on August 14, 2016, from Baby Monday Peak in the Cheam Range, which is located in the Fraser Valley region of the lower mainland of British Columbia near the city of Chilliwack. Gordon was hiking to Baby Monday Peak with 2 friends on Sunday, August 14, 2016. He wanted to explore a different peak, so he went ahead of the group and disappeared. His friends said he was physically and mentally strong. He was a long-distance runner and had completed several marathons. His friends and family also said he was an experienced hiker who knew the area well. Search and rescue crews were first called out on the night of August 14th to look for Gordon in the Chilliwack River Valley. He was last seen near Baby Monday Peak. A large search was organized with ground teams, helicopters, drones, and police dogs. The crews thoroughly searched the area, but did not find a trace of Gordon. His family had returned to the mountain daily, assisting in the searches. North Shore Search and Rescue even brought in a thermal imaging camera. After a week, on August 21, Chilliwack Search and Rescue recommended to the RCMP that the search be called off. They said, after consulting with search and rescue managers from Kent Harrison SAR, Coquitlam SAR, and North Shore Rescue, the management team from Chilliwack SAR reviewed all aspects of the search operation on Sunday. A report was presented to the Chilliwack RCMP recommending the suspension of the search. Members of Gordon's family thanked the various search and rescue teams for their courageous and tireless efforts in a statement. However, they also vowed to continue the search privately via other channels. Segu's niece, Manpreet Gill, said, "This has been one of the most agonizing and challenging times our family has ever gone through. Nothing has been harder than returning home each day without him. He is strong, determined, resilient. There isn't a powerful enough word to describe my uncle." Gordon remains missing, and there have been no further updates. Number 2 and 1. Jonathan Jeté and Rachel Bagnall. 34-year-old Jonathan Jeté and 24-year-old Rachel Bagnall were last seen on September 4th, 2010. They disappeared from the Spetch Creek Forest Service Road that leads to Valentine Lake in British Columbia, Canada. Rachel was studying to become a physician and was planning a trip to Colombia where she would be working for a year in underprivileged communities. She had been hiking since the age of 5. Jonathan worked for the government in Quebec and was an avid climber. The couple were planning to enjoy their last few days together by hiking and visiting Valentine Lake near Pemberton before Rachel was to move abroad. According to bank records, the couple visited Tim Hortons in Squamish on September 4th, where they purchased a coffee and a hot chocolate at 7:42 a.m. From there, they traveled through Whistler, Pemberton, and towards Birken before parking on the Spetch Creek Forest Service Road and presumably taking the trail that would lead them to Valentine Lake, about a 5-hour hike. It was Rachel's sister, Elizabeth, who notified authorities that something was amiss on September 8th when the couple hadn't returned to Vancouver as expected on the 6th. Jonathan's 4-door Toyota Echo was found by authorities on the service road almost immediately. They recovered the empty cups from Tim Hortons coffee shop from the car, as well as a cell phone. The records showed that Jonathan hadn't made any calls after September 3rd. Nothing else noteworthy was found in the area around the vehicle. A full search and rescue operation was launched. The RCMP climbing team was sent to rappel down and search. Rescue dogs and cadaver dogs were brought in. No trace of the couple was found. The official search was called off in October, more than a month after the couple were first reported missing. Police were provided with a tip that a witness saw smoke in the area above Peg Creek during the days that the couple would have been camping. Unfortunately, nothing was discovered. A couple months later, in December of 2010, another witness in Mount Curry reported some unusual bird activity. After the long wait for the snow to melt, police met the witness on the ground and mapped out the area where the bird activity had been observed. It was then searched with multiple teams, all coming up empty yet again. Police have looked through Jonathan and Rachel's homes, Facebook accounts, cell phone records, and personal computers, as well as their bank accounts and credit cards, and found nothing. Although a few new pieces of evidence have surfaced, like some nail clippers which were DNA tested and the discovery of an old fire pit near the Peg Creek area, these leads have proven to be dead ends.
All right, that is Steve Stockton Tells Untold Missing Person Mysteries. Once again, appreciate Steve Stockton being a part of the After Hours radio show right here on Spaced Out Radio. It is always awesome to hear that. But these people are missing, so hopefully they get closure. The families get closure at some point down the line. Next up, we have Josh Rutledge stepping in for Drew Banke with the After Hours wrap-up. Here we go.
You're an irredeemable monster!
Come here, I'm gonna eat you! Get in my belly!
Kick him in the north!
He doesn't have heart! Go it! That man's got heart! You monster!
Yes. We have none other than Mystic Journeys, Josh Rutledge, stepping in for Drew Banke with the After Hours wrap-up. What's been going on, Josh?
You know, it's just been one interesting topic after another. Really enjoyed tonight's guest. That was a fantastic conversation. And of course, all the, bombshell UFO stuff that has come out over the last couple of days with some pretty extravagant claims. So, yeah.
We got a lot to talk about. Yeah, and actually you'll be here with us as well next week as a guest, so that's going to be super fantastic. But yeah, no, you're right. The Reverend is always great. He knows his stuff, and when we talk about this, like disclosure, so I feel like we're so close. We've talked about this before. And then as well, we have the whole situation happening in the news with I'll say the name Epstein. People are afraid to say it. I'm just going to say Epstein. Right, exactly. But you see, and the thing, and my big thing is that, and I have no stake in this. I don't care who's on what side. It doesn't matter. I think what we're getting to see is, for one, we're seeing people who usually would be against each other coming together as one for once in a lifetime. And then at the same time, we're seeing behind the curtain, we're seeing that there is a mechanism behind the curtain that facilitates cover-ups. And so now that we have this newfound information, and we know that there is no conspiracy theory, we know that likely anytime they use that label, it means they're covering something up. So we can go backwards and look at other things like the UFO subject, the cover-up there, all the other cover-ups, and then kind of know that there's probably more to the story just based on what we're going through right now. What do you think about that, Josh?
Yeah, it's possible. And I also don't want to get too far into the political side of it, but I'll say that it's also equally possible that that it's a very personal reason to kind of stomp it down and say there's nothing to see here, right? Because there may be folks that don't want to be associated with it if it comes out. So I think that's probably as vague as I can be in my response. But so you're right. I mean, it's possible that there really is nothing there, and we can use that as a template to look back at other conspiracies to see where there may be, have been some other clues or disinformation provided over the years. or there is something there and it's just personal, and so it shouldn't be applied or looked at anything else. We shouldn't use it as a template when we're looking at other conspiracies. So I don't know, and I'm kind of on the fence as to which way it is. I also don't put it past. I mean, at the end of the day, whether you're conservative, liberal, Republican, Democrat, independent, whatever the case may be, most politicians will say whatever they need to say to get elected. And it's very possible that there is something there. And Trump and his administration just pulled at that heartstring a little bit to get elected and never really had any intention of pursuing it once he was elected. Kind of with the UFO stuff. He, on the campaign trail, he said he was going to release it as soon as he took office. And we're 7 months in or so, something like that, 8 months in, and we haven't seen anything. So, yeah.
And see, for me, the faces that are on the face of this don't even matter to me. You could replace this face with that face, interchangeable pieces. But I think what they've done is those people who behind the scenes who never show their faces, those ones that are pulling those strings, is like there's never been an opening to get to those people or to even validate that those people were there. It's like always something we thought of, like there's got to be this group back there that is really controlling things, and it's always a thought that we've had. We've been labeled conspiracy theorists by the government themselves, and so it's like a moment for us to, like, just like on the Wizard of Oz when they got to look inside and see the guy pulling all the levers and doing all the stuff.
Yeah.
It's like we're getting that peek behind there. So now,
yeah,
for me, I don't think you can even use the term conspiracy theorists anymore, because we know that usually if you're going to use that against us or against anyone, it means you're hiding something. And it means those people back there are trying to divert something.
I think it's also really important that we don't, like, by us allowing the government or the media or anybody else to label us conspiracy theorists, it really takes away our power as investigators. At the end of the day, right, we whether it's you, me, at the end of the day, everybody has come across something that seemed odd and they've tried to investigate it. And a conspiracy theorist is really just, if you break it down, it's just saying that you believe that one or two or more parties work together to hide some piece of evidence as it relates to this weird thing or odd thing or situation that happened. And conspiracies happen all the time, every day, outside of even just government stuff. I mean, they happen with, business workings and merger and acquisitions and all kinds of other stuff. So the fact that we've basically given the power to the government to label anybody who questions the status quo as a conspiracy theorist, it really takes away our power as a community, as a society, to question those that are in power, not just political power, but in corporate power, in state, local government power, whatever the case may be. We've allowed them to take away our power to question them in a valid way.
Yeah, and those people behind those closed doors who we've never got to see their faces or still don't know their names or who they really are, but we've been able to now at least look through the cracked door. And I think at this point, they are afraid of the one thing that could really get to them, and that's unity. Who would have thought unity between human beings putting their differences aside? Who ever thought that would be the power, the superpower that we needed to kind of get through, right? And I think it's beautiful.
I'm originally from Kentucky, and on the Kentucky state flag, above the seal, around the seal, it says, "United we stand, divided we fall," and I think that's 100% true. And when we look back through our kind of history as humans, anytime we've been united, we've got stuff done. But so what's the goal? The goal is to divide us as much as possible.
That's right. We're going to get back into the conversation because, like I say, there's tough conversation to have on the road to disclosure without getting too deep. I think we've done that. We'll be right back after the break to wrap this whole thing up on Spaced Out Radio, the After Hours Radio Show. See you back in a minute. All right, we are clear. And yeah, so we are, So we're not actually being political, guys, just so you know. There is a lesson, I think, for everyone to learn in this, as far as just knowing that the people behind those closed doors, those untouchable people who control every aspect of everything that we do. I mean, just think about everything, not just what's currently going on, but just a million other things that those people behind the scenes pull the strings on. Just being able to see that those people exist back there. And then knowing that you are not a conspiracy theorist, that when you have this feeling and your senses are telling you that something is wrong. And there's nothing wrong with talking to that. But if you guys, I don't want people in the chat to get all left, right, political or Democrat, Republican. It has nothing to do with that. So if you guys are doing that out there, please stop. And moderators, please delete any of the back and forth stuff.
Yeah, I tried to make it clear that it's not a party issue. This is those in power will always try to manipulate those without. And the truth of the matter is that there are way more of those without than there are of those with. So
yeah, if you guys open your minds up, man, that's the trap a lot of people fall into, is this side, that. Who cares about that? You guys are all human beings. We're all human beings. We all bleed the same, period. And anytime you come into a show that I'm a part of, I just ask that you leave all that stuff at the door. Don't bring that stuff into the show, because it has nothing to do with that. This is human beings trying to get to disclosure, trying to change the world, trying to make things better on this planet. Nothing more, nothing less.
Yep. Well said, Rob.
Oh, it just gets to me, man. Gets to me. The people would just, But how you been, Josh? How you been, man?
I've been doing great, man. Got all kinds of stuff going on. Arizona is like a hotbed right now. I was out at a friend's house last night, actually, and we saw some weird stuff going on. I'm playing around with the UAP dog whistle, making it into a binaural meditation to see where that goes. So be experimenting with that soon.
I think you told me where you could find that at. Where can you find that at again? Let me write
this if you Google UAP dog whistle, there's all kinds of sites that have it. I've actually got it hosted on my website for anybody who wants to grab it there.
Okay.
You can go to ourmysticjourneys.com/UAP dog whistle, or if you just go to ourmysticjourneys.com on the main page, there's a link at the top for UAP dog whistle. But yeah, it's pretty cool. Getting into it. So.
And what is it exactly? Is it an audio file, or what is it?
Yeah, it's a collection of different audio sounds. So it's like 432 hertz, 528 hertz. There's like an underlying kind of ocean sound. It's just kind of, like almost like a brown noise type sound that's kind of going up and down in volume at random intervals to kind of mimic the ocean. There's a sound that pings every 17 hertz. So we can't hear it. It's at a volume we can't hear. Same thing for there's one at 2.7. And so the thought is from the Skywatcher guys is that they play this audio. It doesn't matter how loud you play it, but they play this audio, and UAP showed up. But I started thinking, well, what if I took that audio and basically broke up 432 and 528 across, ears? So 432 over here, 528 over here. Mm-hmm. It creates then a binaural beat of 96, which is in the gamma range, which is like deep, profound spiritual enlightenment type meditation range, like monks that meditate for hours and hours, are seeking to get to that range. So I I thought I'd try the same and just see, do a meditation with it and see what comes of it. So
that's awesome. That's awesome. We'll definitely have we'll be talking about that next week. So make sure you guys come in and watch that show. Josh will be here next Saturday with us as a guest. We're gonna have a great time. So hit your notification bell on that and make sure you're back here. We're coming back here in 5 seconds. Hopefully it doesn't crash on me, but I have a feeling it will. Here we go. All right, welcome back. Spaced Out Radio, the After Hours Radio Show. We are in the third hour, after hour number 3, the back half of the third hour. Getting some of the After Hours wrap up with Josh Rutledge, who's stepping in for Drew Banky, who will be back next week. Guys, remember, if you missed any of the awesome conversation we had with the Reverend earlier tonight, Reverend Michael J. Carter, jump in the archive. It's 100% free. It's youtube.com/at Spaced Out Radio as we get back into it here. So, yeah, we're going to definitely get back, talk some more about this, the conversation we had with the Reverend. But I did want to talk to you about, and by next week, it'll be kind of old news. So let's talk about the whole Ross Coulthard statement that he came out with. How do you, it felt like misinformation to me, or maybe he's, maybe he's just reporting it as he sees it and he's not consciously doing this. What do you think about it?
I don't know. I'm of a couple of different minds. One, he said it while on somebody else's show. So he was being interviewed and he kind of dropped it on there. So, do I take it as his opinion, or do I take it as him as an investigative journalist? He's uncovered this truth and he chose this show as opposed to his own show to make it public. So that's one piece. Two is I really get the feeling like in some of the other interviews that he's done with like the egg UFO folks and the people that recovered the laptops and hard drives and all that, in some of those other interviews, they have mentioned that those hard drives that were recovered were returned to Stephen Greer. And so I wonder if, anybody who knows anything about Stephen Greer knows that he is adamant that the Tic Tac is a human created reproduction vehicle and blah, blah, blah. So it sounds like maybe Coulthard is either just, taking on Stephen Greer's, perspective or stance on this, or potentially he's even had a conversation with Greer and Greer has shown him something that has led him to this. I think that the whole statement around people who see UFOs are always said, incredible, I'm going to paraphrase this, but incredible sightings require incredible evidence. So I think the same is true here for Ross. If you're going to make this claim, you have to produce something to back it up.
Yeah, I agree. Now, let me ask you this, because when I saw him say this, and actually for anybody who knows, we're talking about Ross Coulthard came out and said that he's, and I have the quote here, that he's under, just let me make sure because I want to say this right. Basically, he's stating that I now know categorically that the Tic Tac is Lockheed Martin technology. He goes on to also talk about the drones in New Jersey being China. Which it's just bananas. Both of those things are bananas. So when you said that he had said this on someone else's show, what was that? Because the first time I saw him say it was on Need to Know with him and Bryce Zabel. Did he say it again before that?
No, that's where I saw it as well.
Okay.
But I mean, that's not his show, right? That's not the show that he does for News Nation.
Oh, you mean the reality check?
So he didn't drop it there. He chose to drop it, while he was being interviewed on somebody else's show. So it's like I said, is it a personal opinion? Is it a personal truth? Or is it him as an investigative journalist using this other show to reveal this piece of information?
Well, to be clear, Need to Know is his show, is him and Bryce's show together. But But separately from that, because this was one of the things that I also said was that, okay, he has this podcast lane and the show he does with Bryce Abel. Then he also has the national outlet through News Nation with the reality check. And I was like, okay, he said it here, but he didn't say it over here on News Nation. So that was weird to me. But then also, were you aware that Rep Burleson had already said this or came with the same idea like a month ago? Did you hear that soundbite?
I did not.
Okay, I want you to hear that. And it gives me an excuse to go ahead and play it again. So this is a soundbite from about a month ago. Rep Burleson saying exactly the same thing that Ross Coulthard was coming. And it was weird to me because I don't know if he knew this clip was out there, but this was Rep Burleson over a month ago saying this.
But there was a really funny story about these Tic Tacs and drones and these sightings. And I was saying, it's probably U.S. military technology they're not disclosing. How insane would it be for the U.S. to be like, by the way, here's the latest weapon we've developed. It can fly and move through space and time. However, in the article, it said the sightings were 70 miles away from a naval research base for advanced aeronautics or whatever. And I was like, are we stupid? Come on. Like the U.S. So not all of it, but I think one of the explanations we get often is that the U.S. government likes the narrative of aliens because it does two things. It throws people off the scent of the weapons tech they're developing, but it's also terrifying to our adversaries if they do believe that aliens have allied with us and have given us advanced tech.
Yes, I've heard that too. And there's moments where in this journey, I have come to that conclusion. But then there's also moments where, so for example, one individual, I've had two people come to me that say that the Tic Tac is a Lockheed Martin creation. The latest person that came to me says he has video of the first, second, and third iteration of the Tic Tac, and he's going to show me. So I'm trying to set that up. The way he describes it is that they had a prototype, they've made changes to it, they've made it more advanced. And then now it's in iteration number 3, which I did see a photo of, and it looks like pretty advanced military like craft, like a plane, but it's clearly human made. It's nothing that I've ever seen, our military has, but his claim is that they have discovered a propulsion that's a new type of propulsion. They used it in the first iteration, which was the Tic Tac. They have an intermediary one that they are more advanced with. And then now they're putting it inside of what looks conventional so that it's not obvious.
Disguise. Oh, that's interesting. So you're saying eventually the tech makes its way into things that we're already familiar with.
Well, right. But I thought you were explaining that if someone were to see it, they'd say it's a plane.
Right. They would say that's a military plane.
Okay, so that was Rep Burleson on the Tim Pool podcast like a month ago. And he is already saying all this. So it was strange to me when I saw Ross kind of trying to bring this as like breaking news and making this be something like he's the first one to bring out. So my question was, and I talked about this yesterday on yesterday's show, is like, okay, Rep Burleson just told you right there, someone came to him in show, or a couple people, and they showed him images of what appeared to be early versions of the Tic Tac, and then newer versions as well. They're going to bring them another version coming soon. My question was, who was doing that? Was it done in the skiff? Probably not, because he wouldn't be on a podcast, talking about it. So it had to be someone who maybe stopped them in the hallway, or someone that caught him at the diner. So who is this person that showed him that? Is it the same person that Ross Coulthard is talking to? I don't know if that's Stephen Greer. I know a lot of people are saying Stephen Greer, but I don't know if either one of those people put a lot of stock into Stephen Greer's claims. So I'm feeling like it's probably somebody else. But the thing is that it seems to be like an active misinformation campaign. That's what I've gathered so far. I don't know. What do you think?
It's interesting. I also think that it's let's say that it is Greer that is the mystery person that's showing them this. because of the controversy associated, they can just be like, you know, an unnamed person, and it can still be grayer. So that's one piece. And then the other one is I made a little short clip of that post, that comment that Russ made, and I put it on my own YouTube and TikTok, and I got some feedback from folks. And one person said, and I'm gonna read you verbatim, said, components are built for the Tic Tac, as you call it, by Proceris Technologies, which is now owned by Lockheed and final assembled in Palmdale, California. So I don't know, you know, I don't know, you know, if it sounds credible, it sounds informed. But then on TikTok, I got a bunch of people saying, well, then I was abducted by Lockheed Martin or whatever in 1968, because their abduction story involves a Tic Tac. So, you know, we've talked about this before on your show. I've talked about it with Dave and other shows. The problem with making claims about something where the only way the claim could be defended is if the originator, which we suspect is ET or aliens, would be for them to come forward and say, no, you're wrong. And so just like the crop circles in 94, where those two guys said they made it all with ropes and boards and all the stuff that Greer said, like it's easy to make those claims because the originator is not going to defend themselves.
Right. And just like you said, and I agree with that. And I was talking to Sir Brian Bowden last night, and I was telling him, you know, if we were to look, so let's go back to basics. Let's just look at what we do know. And so what we do know is that Lockheed Martin has released everything that they've released since the 50s have been angular sort of craft and taken on a specific sort of design language when you look at everything that they've released. So nothing that indicates that they have anything like a Tic Tac being developed just based off of what they've released previously. So I don't see a drastic, all of a sudden they've you know, released a B-21 or whatever the last thing they released was, and then all of a sudden they have a Tic Tac. Plus it goes back to the 50s. So what we do know, if we go back to basics, we do know that there are anomalous craft coming here from somewhere else. We know they exhibit anti-gravity technology. We know that the government has released these angular craft. So if I see something in the sky anomalous, until the government shows me something else, then we have to go with what we know, which is that we have ET tech that is coming here from somewhere else. And that's all we can really, that's as far as we can take it until someone shows something else.
Yeah, and it's really interesting. I mentioned I was out at a friend's house last night. We were doing some woo stuff, and I was using dowsing rods, you know, to ask questions and get, you know, yes, no responses. And this topic came up, and my friend that I was with, he said, you know, is Ross telling the truth? And the rod's uncrossed for no. And we got into the origin of the Tic Tac and what the you know, the yes no crossing of the rods, where we led to is that the Tic Tac was discovered half buried and has been attempted, and so basically they can make it work, but they don't know how it works. They aren't able to create any more of them, but they can make it work. And it was built by a previous iteration of humanity, the Atlanteans, the Lemurians, somewhere around in there, that they built it. But like I said, it was discovered. They can fly it around, but they can't do anything else with it because they don't know how it works. They don't understand the science, the physics, all of that kind of stuff that makes it work. And so in that regard, Lockheed Martin maybe is the company that found it and obtained it from the government to investigate and all that kind of stuff. But did they build it from scratch? I don't think so.
There you go.
I think ethically, morality, people should be brought to trial if that's the case, because that means they've willingly sent men and women, soldiers to their death when they have technology that could have prevented or even stopped a war in its track. tracks. So,
and I've said this as well, Josh. I just actually said this to Sir Brian yesterday. And I was like, Ben Rich famously, we have the tech to take ET home. And I was telling people how you can look at that two different ways, saying, okay, we built something unlikely, or that we've retrieved an object that could take ET home, more likely, very likely. And so that lines up exactly what you said. Maybe they recovered Tic Tac. They can't build one on their own. They can't reverse engineer it, but maybe they can fly it. I can go with that. That sounds logical, but then it's not man-made craft, and it's still extraterrestrial craft at the end of the day.
Unless you say it's Atlantean, at which point it would be like man-made, but a million years ago man-made, or whatever, however long the Atlanteans lived a long time ago or whatever. But so there's like half truths, maybe. It's like for every sentence, every third word is the truth. But so you have to listen to the entire paragraph in order to really discern how much of it is true and how much of it isn't.
This is true, and we're getting right into it, but we're going to go ahead and stop it right here, Josh. I appreciate the after hours wrap up. We're going to
next week.
Exactly. We're going to get into it. We're going deep next week with Josh Rutledge. Josh, thanks for filling in for Drew.
Yep.
We will be talking again soon, sir.
Thank you.
All right, take care. All right, guys, Josh Rutledge next week. Make sure you do not miss that show. We're going to go deep as we always do. And right now we're going to just go ahead and get into some UFO weird news, try to get a story out before we end the show here. Here we go.
Ladies and gentlemen, can I please have your attention? I've just been handed an urgent and horrifying news story. But I need all of you to stop what you're doing and listen.
All right, UFO and weird news of the week. I had a creepy little story here. I had two, but we'll get through one at least. Creepy hotel footage shows man with no past erasing all traces of himself from history. The mystery surrounding Peter Bergman's unusual death still hasn't been solved. Social media users have been spooked after watching chilling closed-circuit television footage depicting the final movements of an unidentified man before his mysterious death. Video taken from inside the Sligo City Hotel in Ireland captured the comings and goings of a bloke known only as Peter Bergman, which is the alias he checked in under. It recently resurfaces on social media 16 years after the mystery man's body was discovered at Ross's Point Beach. The clip was shared to TikTok alongside the description, "A man with no past is quietly erasing himself." The footage sheds light on Bergman's unusual activities before his remains were discovered on June 16, 2009. 4 days before locals made the tragic find at Ross's Point Beach, Bergman arrived at Ulster Bus Depot in the Irish city of Derry before boarding a bus to Sligo. He eventually made his way to the Sligo City Hotel, paying for a room in cash. He gave the receptionist a fake name as well as a non-existent home address in Vienna, Austria. The hotel guest was carrying a worn-looking bag while he was described as being of slender build and 5'10" in height. Bergman has short gray hair, blue eyes, and a slight tan, was believed to be in his late 50s or early 60s, and spoke with a thick German accent. Staff at the Sligo City Hotel presumed he was a professional worker. They also noted that he was frequently spotted heading outside to smoke in surveillance videos. During his stay, further CCTV footage also captured Bergman repeatedly leaving the hotel with a purple plastic bag full of items, but each time he returned, the bag was empty. Police believe he discarded the contents in various spots throughout Sligo, out of the view of surveillance cameras in the coastal town. According to authorities, his movements appeared to be calculated and methodical, as though he purposely disposed of items in places he knew were blind spots. 3 days before his body was found, Bergman was seen buying 8 international stamps from the post office with airmail stickers. The next day, he left the hotel and asked the taxi driver for a nice, quiet beach location where he could swim, and was informed that Ross's Point was a good spot. Bergman made the journey there with the driver, took a brief look around, and headed back to the car, which then dropped him off at the bus station in Sligo. On 15th of June, Bergman checked out of the hotel at around 1 p.m., still without an ID or passport, and departed the establishment with an array of luggage. He was carrying a black shoulder bag, a purple plastic bag, and another bag. However, the worn one he had arrived with was nowhere to be seen. Bergman made a brief stop at Quayside Shopping Center before heading to a nearby cafe and consuming a toasted ham and cheese sandwich. He was seen writing something on a piece of paper, staring at it for a few minutes, and then tearing it up and throwing it away. In the afternoon, Bergman headed back to Ross's Point Beach, where reports say he was seen by 16 people as he stood on the sand, fully dressed with his shoes in his hand. He was spotted at 10:50 p.m., still pacing, and even had a brief encounter with the local on the beach who said hello to him. Less than 24 hours later, Bergman's body was discovered at the beach by a father and son. His clothes, only a t-shirt and underwear, were found on the shore nearby. After the discovery of Bergman's corpse, police in Ireland launched an investigation into the bizarre case, which spanned across 5 months. A post-mortem revealed that the man had advanced stages of prostate cancer and bone tumors, while his heart had signs of previous ischemic heart disease. Despite all of these conditions, there was no trace of medication in his system. The official cause of death was determined to be acute cardiac arrest, as there were no water in his lungs, with no signs of struggle or injury. It is thought that his heart failed just moments before he went into the sea. Strangely, the labels of each item of clothing found on Bergman's body had been removed. Cops scoured databases, desperate to find a photograph, fingerprint, or DNA match for the man, but it was futile. The Gardaí then called time on the 5-month investigation, having been unable to get to the bottom of Bergman's true identity. More than 15 years on, questions regarding the unusual circumstance surrounding Bergman's passing largely remain unanswered. No relatives or friends have come forward, despite numerous public appeals in Austrian and German publications, as well as in Ireland. Bergman's body was laid to rest in Sligo, following a funeral service which was attended by 4 Gardaí officers. Very, very strange. Never heard that story before, but we'll go ahead and leave you with that. We want to go ahead and thank our guest here tonight, Reverend Michael J. Carter, for coming in, being awesome. As always, we're going to go ahead and thank you guys as well. We're going to thank Josh Rutledge for stepping in for Drew Banky tonight with the After Hours wrap-up. We also want to thank the man that you hear right there, Mr. Ron Bumblefoot Thal. He's the man that rocks us out each and every weekend and reminds us to never say never again, because, yes, the phenomenon is real, which means anything and everything is possible. So if you love what you saw tonight, go ahead, throw your horns up. Also, we want to thank our viewers online and listeners on terrestrial radio and digital platforms, when and wherever in the world you may be listening from. We appreciate you for tuning your frequency to Spaced Out Radio, where we do what we do best. What's that you ask? We own the night. Remember, the show is copyrighted Spaced Out Radio, SR Media Ventures Limited. It has been a pleasure serving you. Once again, as your host, I'm Mr. Rob G. This is the After Hours Radio Show. And to all you space travelers out there, it's not a goodbye nor a farewell. However, as we go off air for the night, you can best believe we'll be right back here doing the same thing, same time, same place. So, guys, we will see you next time. Make sure you show up, hit the notification bell. Take care. we are clear as we wrap on another fantastic show right here on the After Hours Radio Show, guys. It has been fun hanging out with you guys, having these real conversations that move the needle. We will continue to do so. We'll be right back right here next weekend. As you saw, Josh Rutledge will be the guest. We also, I can't wait. It was a couple of weeks. We have Steve Bassett coming on the show, and it's one of the big ones coming up that I've just been waiting for. And you definitely want to make sure to be around for that. It should be a super, super awesome conversation. Steve Bassett, as you've never seen him before. And we'll make sure of that, guys. So with that being said, we're going to go ahead and get up out of here. You guys have a great week, and you already know how we get up out of here. We want retribution. Especially with the way things are going nowadays within the world, we definitely want retribution. That's how we're going to end it, guys. Have a great rest of your night. Have a great week. Take care.
Cause we want retribution. Oh yeah, we want retribution. Oh yeah, we want retribution.